What's up, Whisper Nation? We're back with another Mock Draft Monday. This time we got another special guest. Ryan Weisse from the Fantasy Club Fantasy FFL is with us, and we're doing a 12-team half-point PPR Dynasty startup this week. So we're excited to get some rookie talk in there, some Dynasty talk with our guy Ryan right here on the Fantasy Whispers.
Right here.
That's right, Mock Draft Monday back in action. If you guys are new to the Fantasy Whispers, please hit a like, hit a subscribe. Let us know that you're joining Whisper Nation in the chat below. I am Big Travie. You can find me on Twitter at Big Travie TFW. I am joined by, as always, by Johnny Game Time Hicks. You can find on Twitter at Johnny_Game Time. But today, and soon we're going to have Austin on here, I believe. We're just having a little bit of technical difficulties there. But we're joined by Ryan Weisse, who we've had on a couple times before. Ryan, you can find him on Twitter at TheFantasy5. Ryan, how you doing today, brother?
Fantastic. I appreciate you guys having me live on the show. I was kind of talking with Johnny before that. I think I've been in quite a few of these lately since you guys have started them back up. But normally I'm just the anonymous face in the chat with the mustache. Now you guys got to actually hear me talk trash about it.
And it's a beautiful mustache. I'm glad to have it on live.
I trimmed it down. It's not full curl right now, but it'll be ready for the fantasy season. So
all right, that's good. We'll have you on for the mock draft marathon. We hope that it's in pristine condition for that.
Absolutely.
That's a requirement.
Hey, I have no faith, or I have no doubt that it will be ready. Ryan is a man of his word.
That's right. I'm actually going to put it on my calendar now. That it better be sheer perfection.
Set a timer on his phone.
Shape.
Set a timer on his phone.
So Ryan, just quickly, I told them where they can find you on Twitter. What is it that you're doing out there in the industry? We know you're all over the place. Obviously, we met you through Club Fantasy FFL, who we've done some partnership with before. But what are you doing right now, and what's your off-season grind looking like?
Main gigs are I am a writer for the Fantasy Footballers. I think I'm heading into my 5th, maybe 6th year of doing that. When they first brought on their first set of writers, I'm a part of their first set of writers. So great group of guys over there. Everybody knows the Ballers. Great organization to work with. Just this past year, met up with Josh and all those guys over at Club Fantasy, Josh and Joe, and had done so many shows with them. They said, the chemistry is great. Let's go ahead and bring you on as a co-host. So for about a year now, I've been doing that with them. My off-season grind, right now I'm starting very, very early on with my projections, basically trying to figure out how many runs per game and passes per game, because you have to now project a 17-game schedule instead of a 16-game schedule, which is changing everything up. But one thing I want to plug while we get going is today is International Women's Day, and we did a big kick last summer with the hashtag Women of Fantasy Football, WOFF. You can actually see it behind me here. And so we started a second podcast called The Speakeasy, which is run by Linda at Lindellians. And so we, from the Speakeasy account, are highlighting a bunch of the fabulous women in our industry. I would love for people to go check out those tweets. It is at The Speakeasy FF. I think it's great. I think we need to uplift women in this industry, and I think it's a cool thing we're doing, and I'm loving every bit of it.
Right on. We appreciate that. So make sure, Whisper Nation, you get out and take a look at what Ryan's talking about there, and we will retweet that out and get that up on our page too.
You guys already have a few of them. You've been killing it. So
yeah, so we'll make sure we get going on that. But yeah, it's an important point to recognize the women in our industry and recognize the women in our life in general. So we appreciate that.
Indeed. I'm a stay-at-home dad because my wife is amazing. So
yeah, you're already doing it on a daily. We love that.
That's right.
Well, welcome in Austin Sear, who is joining us here on the live. We got him in. Technical difficulties be damned. Austin, how are you doing, brother?
Man, I'm happy to be here with you, Big Travie, and Johnny Game Time Hicks, and Ryan, man. It's been a while since the mock draft marathon. Yeah, how are you doing? How's the kids?
Fantastic. He's doing great. Just finished up the school day. We almost had one of my alarms go off right in the middle of the show. So we had to no homework check today, but all in all, everybody's doing great. Thanks for checking in, Austin.
Yeah, definitely, man. Good to see you here. So
well, we're doing our also, I was just going to say, I took over a little bit for you, but by all means, let Whisper Nation know again what we're doing here. Got a full draft and everything.
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited about this one. We have not gotten to do much Dynasty action, and we're doing a 12-team half-point PPR startup. Dynasty startup mock draft. So if anybody's listening who's not totally familiar, that's the #1 draft you'll do for your Dynasty league. It's when every player is on the board, and every subsequent year then you are just drafting rookies and guys that people had dropped or that were on the free agent, not players that are actually on other league managers' rosters. So that's a 12-team half-point PPR. We got the entire room full, Johnny. Good job.
Yeah, you guys ready to start?
Let's
yeah.
do it.
All right, hitting that start button. Easy Daddy, love it. He loves that number one spot, or like the 1, 2, or 3. Always mock him from that spot, but gotta love him.
You gotta expect.
love.
Well, I would say you
Go
have to
for it,
expect
Ryan.
probably in one of his home leagues, he already knows he has that early pick, so he's trying to figure out like what it's going to look like for him. So.
Ryan, I'm really curious to hear on your takes of who just is the start. I don't know if Travis got a point I want to hear on this one, but I'm just so legitimately curious as who is the correct choice at the top of a dynasty startup right now. Is it DK Metcalf? Is it Christian McCaffrey still? What are you thinking right now?
It's 100% Christian McCaffrey. I mean, I understand last year was a rough year, but last year was a rough year on a bad team, and you have to expect that team's going to improve. He's not old by any stretch of the word. Way to go, Easy Daddy. He's not old by any stretch of the word. He's going to get it done, and more importantly, he gets it done running and in the passing game, so every bit of it works out really, really well. I'm not, at least on the first half of the draft, and that was part of the reason I took this 1-3, was I'm not big into grabbing a wide receiver that early, and especially right now with the questions around Russell Wilson, I would not be jumping to grab DK Metcalf at all. So
Not a bad take. I know Juju was so popular the year that we started our dynasty record league, and it's like just a young guy who came off a great year.
And now look at it.
And now look at it. Yeah, not the same kind of situation.
I also feel like, and we talk about this a lot in redraft, wide receivers are so plentiful. And while in a dynasty startup, that means not quite as much. What it does mean is the trade market after the draft is wide open for wide receivers. You see wide receivers traded far more than you see running backs traded.
So the fantasy football therapist right here saying, man, how'd these folks get in? They followed us on Twitter at TF Whispers, and they got that link.
And that's what everybody here can do. If you have not already liked and subscribed to the YouTube channel, to the Twitter page, Instagram page, make sure you do. Mainly because we get a lot of the links and the engagement going. We want to have you join us. So follow on Twitter, and you'll get the links to our mock draft every Monday coming out, and jump into the mock draft with us. We love to draft alongside of fellow fantasy football fans and members of Whisper Nation. And it's been getting more and more full. I remember we did this a couple of weeks ago, and it was about half full, and now it's getting full like an hour before we even get started. So just follow on Twitter, and you can be a part of the action with us. Maybe we'll see Ryan again.
Oh, you'll definitely see me again. I was just going to say, even when I'm not invited on the show, I like to jump into these. My Monday afternoons are pretty wide open, and I've talked about this with you guys before. There's no better tool than a mock draft for just everything. You're going to start to see where guys who you value go in the draft, so you know if you need to take them around earlier than you planned on taking them, because ADP can only get you so far. Seeing it live in action is really going to provide the best experience.
That's it, 100%. 100%. We got a bunch of comment. We're killing it on the comments. Matt with the Devontae Adams reach, LOL. Hey, what we like to say around here is when people do that, they're just reach for your guy.
There you go.
Love that one. He's also saying Metcalf is so overrated. I'm not sure I agree with that.
I wouldn't go that far. Yeah.
Okay, what clown just? Excuse me. What
fine
listener,
gentleman?
What novice just said that? See, there's the thing, and I'd love to be talked off the ledge on this one, but for me, DK Metcalf is a far outlier, and he came in. Some people said he should be the number one drafted rookie. We know he didn't go till the end of the second, start of the third round, and a lot of this had to do with the perceived route tree. He just wasn't a developed receiver. We knew his physicals, his intangibles were through the roof, or those hard numbers, but maybe the intangibles actually were what needed to be worked on. We saw him throw cornerbacks to the ground. We're talking like Stephon Gilmore level of cornerbacks. He's as fast as Tyreek Hill. He's as tall as
a freaking oak tree, dude.
Yeah, and he can play at all different kinds of positions. Like, why isn't this the number one wide receiver that we should be targeting?
I'll tell you
in
why.
Dynasty.
I will tell you why, because I'm so excited. I know Ryan will probably has a perspective on this, but I can honestly say, because I've had this debate with a lot of people, because I was so ingrained. I wanted the Cardinals to get DK so badly. And guess what? It's because he slipped. He slipped on the 3-cone drill. And because of that, everyone was like, oh, he's not agile. He's not elusive. He's not going to be a good wide receiver because he can only run the 9 route. And that's the only thing he's good for. When I said that him going to Seattle was really great for him as a player, because great coaches put really good players, and I think that DK is a really good to great player, and then they put them in the best position to succeed, and that's what makes them a superstar. And that's what Pete Carroll has done with Seattle, and you can see him. He's just maturing. And like I said, a lot of people thought, because they saw him slip in a 3-cone drill and that he wasn't elusive and agile. But when you look at the numbers, what's funny is he actually had a very comparable time to Larry Fitzgerald, who, by the way, is one of the all-time greats in the history of the NFL at wide receiver.
Yeah, so Matt's saying here, he only runs a deep route and has a case of the dropsies. A.J. Brown better than DK Metcalf. Sure, like you could make an argument talent-wise, route tree rise. You could go into that argument, but I think, to Ryan's point earlier, and Matt even said it, if no Russell Wilson, Metcalf barely a wide receiver too. Yeah, there's some validity to that argument. Let's say we're just saying, though, who's the better prospect for Dynasty, what we're drafting in right now, then you have to take into account that Russell Wilson is there. You have to take into account that Russell Wilson throws the best deep ball, the most profitable deep ball in the NFL, and that matched up with DK last year. They were both on a world beater pace until the line and Russell's interception issues came to play. I think DK Metcalf is, easily the top wide receiver in Dynasty, in my opinion, if you're looking at it just prospect wise. But yeah, those are the arguments you want to try and make. Like, what does situation play into this in the whole?
But the fact, and I know this isn't the DK Metcalf show over here or anything, but we had talked a lot about Russell Wilson struggling, after the second half and maybe even a little bit before last season. And Tyler Lockett took a major dive, and DK Metcalf fell as well. But both of these wide receivers were top 5 wide receiver when Russell Wilson was cooking as hot as he was. And then when he fell off, DK Metcalf was no longer a top 3 wide receiver, but he was still putting up numbers that were allowing you to get it done. I mean, the last 3 weeks of the season were dog crap with 4.3, 5.9, and 2.1 points in standard output. But, double digits going all the way up, and just that ceiling is so high for him. It's even if you switch the quarterback, it's like the quarterback is not why he was able to throw Stephon Gilmore to the ground. I don't care who the quarterback is from that perspective, and
that's the thing is, a lot of when you say a guy's a deep threat only, I'm thinking specifically about Tyreek Hill. Is the going sentiment, and it's usually true, is you have a guy press him and you have a guy cover him deep and you can stop him. That doesn't work against DK, because if you have a guy press him, that guy gets thrown on his butt, and now all of a sudden he's one-on-one with a safety that has no chance of covering him. And so calling him a deep threat only is not exactly fair, because if you try to just take away that deep route, he's going to kill you in the intermediate routes, because that safety is going to be too far back after he's done beat up that corner at the line. And you guys hit the exact point. Was Russell Wilson was the perfect situation for DK Metcalf to land in, because he was going to need a hyper accurate quarterback that understood the game. And no matter your thoughts on Russell Wilson, and obviously he's fallen off the last couple of seasons, towards the end of the season, I mean to say, he has one of the best brains that we've seen out of a quarterback in fantasy, in football in general, for years. He understands the game like no one else. And that was exactly what DK needed, because he wasn't polished, but he's certainly a diamond. So,
Well, what a great saying. Wasn't polished, but certainly is a diamond. Woo! Fire.
We got unpolished and polished diamonds, right?
That's right.
And maybe that's a good question here, Ryan. I want to pick your brain while we've got it here on what players right now are unpolished diamonds. And then maybe on the same side, who maybe fool's gold. Like, who's fool's gold, looking shiny, looks real nice, but at the core of that, it's just cheap metal. And then on the other side, it looks just like a rock, but it's just an unpolished diamond, actually. Maybe you're one quarterback away, or a developmental push from really impressing the entire league.
Well, I'm going to throw a guy out to start that it's going to be interesting calling him an unpolished diamond, and he actually falls along the same lines of DK. And it's a guy, we actually talked about him, I think, in the last mock draft chat. And I think I talk about him with you guys every time I'm on this show. I'm, of course, talking about Terry McLaurin.
Mm.
Terry McLaurin has done what he's done with no quarterback. And I mean, I understand Alex Smith is the greatest comeback story in the history of football and all that. He still was awful if you go and just look at the raw numbers. And so McLaurin is a guy much like DK that if a real quarterback lands there, and I was hoping so bad it was going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he is announcing his potential retirement today, which is just heartbreaking for everything that I've ever wanted. But Terry McLaurin is a guy who I really do feel like that if he's given a proper quarterback and a proper second weapon across from him, he is going to be a problem in this league. And I'm talking top 5 every year problem because he was pushing top 10 last year with just absolute nothing at quarterback. Fool's gold is hard because I don't necessarily hate anybody this early in the year yet, but give me a few seconds here. I'll try to find somebody I hate. I'll tell you someone who I'm worried about. We saw Amari Cooper all of a sudden last year be very, very consistent. And I find that interesting, just that out of nowhere, when he's on a team with the best wide receiver core he's ever had, he's all of a sudden finding consistency. And we just saw CeeDee Lamb go off the board. And I think you're going to see a lot of growth out of CeeDee Lamb next year. And then, of course, you want Dak Prescott back. But if Dak Prescott's back on a 1-year franchise tag, you have to wonder about the preparation and what he's going to do and just everything about the chemistry of the team. So Amari Cooper is a guy who I think we could start to see creep up draft boards, maybe not necessarily in Dynasty, but definitely redraft, where he could easily revert back to his ways of one good game every 3 weeks. You never know when to start him. You bench him on his good weeks, you start him on his bad weeks, and he just becomes a nightmare of a roller coaster in fantasy football. So he's a guy who
1,100 yards, still finishes overall looking good, but you're like, why do I feel like it was a big L taking this guy?
Yeah, the end of the year stats don't line up with what you actually got from him. And you brought up Tyler Lockett earlier, and that's a big one where if you strictly look at end of the year stats, you're going to be like, Tyler Lockett was great. Why is everyone hating on him? But then when you look and see that he got all of his points from 3 games, it's like, okay, well, he won me 3 weeks, which is awesome. But he also had 7 weeks, I think, below 10 fantasy points. And that's not what you want out of a wide receiver 1, borderline wide receiver 2.
Yeah, Johnny just did a great job breaking that one down and on our YouTube channel in a video we did for the wide receivers. So I'm glad you brought it up here because, look, I admittedly was a Tyler Lockett over DK coming into last year. I said it a bunch of times, and what you had to do is take that medicine and go, okay, that's not what happened. DK is clearly the number 1, and he's not, and he's going to be more consistent likely because of the style of routes he runs and the way that Russ just looks at him.
And those are all great points. Make sure you do like and subscribe to the Fantasy Whisper so you can catch those daily bits of content coming your way. I do want to do a quick rundown of all the players that we've drafted now coming up to the end of the 3rd round for our listeners. We started off with Christian McCaffrey at the 1-1, followed by Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Devontae Adams, first wide receiver gone, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, and Patrick Mahomes to close out the first. We saw the second start up DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, Ezekiel Elliott, Stephon Diggs, Antonio Gibson, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Austin Eckler, Travis Kelce, Miles Sanders, Cam Akers, Najee Harris to close out the second. And the 3rd round began with Jamar Chase, incoming rookie, followed by Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Hopkins, Josh Allen, Calvin Ridley, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Thomas, George Kittle, second tight end gone, then Chris Godwin, Allen Robinson, Kyler Murray, 3rd quarterback. And I will close out the 3rd round here with making a selection in just a second. But
I do have a comment here. The Cat's Pajamas said, I've never been in a Dynasty League. I'm looking to join one this year. How many rounds are usually in a startup draft? So we'll get everyone's opinion on this. But in this mock draft, we do have 16 rounds. Typically, they are a little bit more, but to conserve some time, I cut it off at 16 rounds with no defense or kickers, just FYI. But Ryan, do you want to talk about your Dynasty leagues and how many players you typically have in yours?
I feel like I typically run 22 to 25. And then after the rookie draft, now we usually end up doing a practice squad as well. Most of the leagues I'm in, only rookies can go to the practice squad. So you basically can hold them there and see what you have for a year. I'm in leagues where the practice squad locks during week 1. And I'm also in leagues where the practice squad is wide open the whole year. So I I use that as a super cheaty way where I'll try to keep one practice squad roster open if I have a really good rookie. And then on his bye week, I'll throw him down there so I can add somebody off of waivers, maybe trade that guy later on to where I kind of play games with that if I can move them both ways. But I would say somewhere 20 to 25, 20 even seems low. So 22 to 25 is what most of my leagues run.
And do you find yourself enjoying larger rostered leagues or smaller rostered ones? We had a conversation in our own Dynasty League about increasing the number, and I think we did. We went from 21 to 25 players on our roster. And then there's always the talks of let's bump it up to 30, and then you get folks who says, no, let's keep the waiver wire a little more exciting. Let's drop it down to 15. You said 21 to 25, but do you kind of lean more towards having expanded rosters makes for a better overall dynamic in your dynasty, or less and a hotter waiver wire is a better dynamic?
So here's where you run into the big question of, do you have the right dynasty managers? Because a larger roster in an active league is far better because you're talking trades, you have things moving all of the time. If you're in a league where not a lot of people are making offseason moves, you definitely want smaller rosters because you do want that waiver wire, especially if you're someone who is serious about it. You want to be able to at least do something. And maybe that something is grabbing James Robinson before the rest of your league even knows who he is. Whereas if you're playing in a 30-player league, some nobody might have accidentally auto-picked James Robinson, and now he's sitting there on the practice squad and doing absolutely nothing. And so that's a case where you can go either way. For me, I'm in every dynasty league I'm in is with people in the industry. So everybody's super active. Everybody's super knowledgeable. I like the bigger rosters, but I will say when you're in a league with a bunch of people from the industry, it's also really intimidating, like trying to trade, because like everybody has their certain value on a player. And sometimes you feel like you're just completely insulting somebody with a trade offer. I don't care if I insult someone with a trade offer, but it can happen because everyone's going to have their specific value on a player. And maybe your offer, what you think is great for them, isn't quite as what they expected to get for that player.
That's a really interesting question, Ryan. I would love to hear if you had any stories on inside your industry leagues of how a trade conversation kind of goes down. You know, in a regular league, people are all over the board in terms of acumen and understanding, and they might do a crazy deal. And they might just because they love a guy for some weird reason, or they might not know about it. But I actually imagine there might be things in a high level of knowledge league where people also might overly inflate a certain guy because of look at this one stat or whatever it might be.
So one thing that really happens is we find out who, just to use a common phrase in the industry now, we find out who everybody's my guys are. And so if you end up with somebody else's favorite player, you're definitely going to try to take them in a trade. So if it's not somebody you're really, really high on, I'll use for another example, Terry McLaurin, Matthew Betts and I, he's with Ball Blast Football, the fantasy footballers, everywhere you've ever looked for the fantasy PT. Both loved McLaurin last year. So in any league where he got McLaurin, I knew I was not going to even make a trade offer for him. But in a league where I got McLaurin, I would offer him a trade offer, but I'd ask for way too much back. And a lot of times the reply text was, I understand what you're doing, but it's way too much. I'm in a lot of leagues with Nate Hamilton, former fantasy footballers writer, huge Cowboys fan. I actually almost was going to send him out an offer today to try to get Ezekiel Elliott. And I realized there's nothing I was going to be able to offer him that was going to land him Ezekiel Elliott. But last year I tried to offer him Tony Pollard, but I asked for way too much back. And I wish I could remember the exact trade, but his exact words were, I love the Cowboys, but that's far too much. And I'm like, well, I have to try. And he's like, oh, I get it. And so you really, because fantasy football analysts are so open about who they love and who they hate, it makes things very interesting. And you can do this in a regular league as well. Give me a second here. You can do this in a regular league as well, where if you know a guy's favorite team, I'm from Northeast Ohio, bunch of Browns fans. If I land a Browns player, I immediately start shopping that guy in week 1 because I know his value to them is way more than what it is for me. And in the industry, as I just brought up, we write articles about these guys. So if you hate a guy and then you accidentally had to draft him because he was the best player available at that position, I've read your I hate that guy article. I'm going to go after him and offer you something super cheap for him. And the exact vice versa. If I know you overvalue a guy, a big guy last year was DJ Moore, who I just drafted recently on this mock draft. I was not as high on DJ Moore as a lot of other people. But I ended up with him a lot. And if I ended up with him, I was definitely sending out the offers to all these people who I saw with tweets every week about how DJ Moore was a hidden wide receiver 1.
These are great.
Yeah, I think that that's genius, which is in part why. So Austin and I have been in trade talks for going on 10 months now, and they've all center around basically the same kind of core, but then we keep changing some parts or whatever. And one of the pieces that I really wanted was Terry McLaurin, and Austin drafted him. And it came to the point where I just
17th round of our startup league too.
I just realized that there's no way that I'm going to be able to get him, because Austin knows how much I love him, and he loves him as well, but he knows. And so I just stopped including him as part of the trade offers because I know there's no way I'm going to get him. So yeah, you just kind of get a feel for these players.
We know what you're doing here, Johnny. This is what they call on-air baiting Austin into a better offer.
Oh, I do that in every show where I'm in with a league mate. You have to. I try to get the deal done on air.
I know Austin. It's that reverse psychology, Ryan. He's like, I know Austin doesn't want to trade me Terry McLaurin, so I'll just give up now.
Don't tell me this. No, but Ryan, I'm curious on that bit of reverse psychology, calling their bluffs out. Are people in the industry fully transparent with who they like? Like, for instance, we all play this game because we love this game, but we also know that sometimes releasing your guys puts either a target on your back or takes away from who you're targeting. Are people in the industry more transparent? Like, I tell you this is my guy and I really do like this guy, or do they use a little bit of smoke and mirrors to drive up engagement, or to say something that's a more or interesting point, but maybe not how they would actually draft if it was for a league of record they cared about?
That is actually an excellent question, Austin. And I'm not just saying that. It's hilarious because before you had even joined, Johnny and I were actually talking about this before the show. So in my home leagues, before I get into the industry, in my home leagues, when I started my first blog that eventually led to the Fantasy Footballers, I had a friend, we were both super competitive in the league, and he's like, you're giving away all of your secrets. And I'm like, they're not secrets. I talk about these players all the time. I'm just bored now, and I want other people to read about these players. And then I joined a new league this year, and the first thing I did was I put my Twitter handle out there, and I said, look, I write about fantasy football. If you guys want to know who I love, and you want to know who I hate, and you want to try to get me in trades, I'm very honest. Go look at this blog. Go look at my Twitter feed. You're going to find out every player I love and every player I hate. And my buddy who invited me to the league is like, why would you do that? And I'm like, well, why not? First of all, I want the followers. I'm not an idiot. Like, that's what we're here for. But I don't know if I'm lucky. I have never at least personally interacted with an inauthentic fantasy analyst. If we love somebody, we are not afraid to share that. And I think it comes down to, and I think every one of you would agree with me here, we want to be right. Yeah. So if I love Terry McLaurin and I don't tell anybody and then come back after the end of the season, I'm like, Terry McLaurin was my wide receiver number 1 all along. And you're like, no, he wasn't. Like, you've done 100 podcasts between now and then, and you never brought him up one time. But if I wrote an article, and this is the thing I always kind of hold over Bet's head because we were kind of competing for his love last year. I wrote the first article about Terry McLaurin last year. And I'm like, Terry McLaurin is my guy, dude. Like, you don't get him. I get him. And so that's just like the fun of it. So I think it's more about, we all want to be right, but we all also, having done this, most of us for a very long time, also understand you're wrong way more than you're right. So like, if someone's wrong, we don't go cutthroat at it. Like he just got drafted. I was very wrong about Mark Andrews last year. And it's funny to say that a guy who finished at tight end 4, I believe, I was wrong about, but I legit thought he could take Travis Kelce's crown, and he was nowhere near that. Nobody's come at me hard about being wrong about Mark Andrews, even though I had him in a ton of leagues, but no one's making me any trade offers for him either because they knew he was my guy last year and this, that, and the other. So I've never really met an inauthentic analyst where they're pushing guys they don't truly believe in. You're going to obviously have clickbaity titles and things like that, but when you get into the reading, you can tell who people believe in and who they don't believe in, as long as, again, it's someone you get to know, you get to trust, things like that. You surround yourself by good people, you usually get good information. So
it was an interesting point that you bring that one up there of wanting to be right and how oftentimes we're wrong. I learned a couple of years ago to just be authentic with my advice, because when I would try to bait someone into going a different direction, I felt like every time I was wrong on that, and I ended up giving them great advice.
Yeah.
And they followed through on a guy that was like, darn. And then when I would be honest about it, maybe it worked out in my favor. Actually, like the cleanest one, it's a different league, but in a fantasy basketball league 2 years ago, I really wanted Ben Simmons. And my partner Chelsea took him right before because I had said how much I wanted Ben Simmons, and that left me with Luka Doncic, who ended up being such a better player.
Worked out fantastically.
Just be honest with it, because you don't know anyways. But lying and then having the dog outcome come on the other side, it feels even worse. Like,
well, and one thing I'll throw out to that is, imagine the two-mindedness you'd have to be when a person asks me just a sit-start question. I'm just thinking, if both of these players on my team, who would I start? Like, I couldn't imagine trying to think it to another level where I'm like, oh, do I actually like this player more? Like, it's just so hard. That's where being authentic makes your life so much easier. If you are who you are, it's going to go very, very well for you. I think it was Mike Liu on Twitter just a few weeks ago, Mike Me Up, said these exact words, that if you are being yourself, if you're the same person on camera that you're not, or that you are off camera, this isn't that hard of a job, because you're not lying all the time. Lying is way harder than telling the truth.
It's hard. You got to construct all these like fake pillars and keep them up, and it just is easy for it to collapse if you're not all the way on top. I'm not smart enough to lie, so I just try not.
There you go.
Too much mental energy.
We have some really cool questions coming in, and I wanted to actually touch on them. So I'm going to flash them on the screen here, because there's something that I think will be a very common theme throughout the entire offseason. And that is, so we have some like, do just reach hard on 4 straight rookies. There, and then we're talking about, the second year running backs. I'm trying to find the comment, but somebody wanted us to rank these the sophomore here, rank the sophomore running backs. You saw them earlier go, Antonio Gibson, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, and then A.J. Dillon followed in a couple of rounds. And I think that is going to be a very common theme question, not only for the reason why you will generally see rookies and second-year running backs go a little sooner than maybe a normal draft is because this is a dynasty startup draft. So generally you want to get the younger guys, or some people do, some people don't. Some people don't do rookies at all, and they like to get those down the road. But that is one reason why running backs are going in the order that they are, or maybe earlier than they normally would. But let me ask you, Ryan, because we kind of touched on this last week's show. I want to pick your brain. Rank those second year running backs, because they're clearly going in this, mid to second to the early third. What are your rankings on those guys?
Jonathan Taylor's heads and tails ahead of everybody for me. The reason I chose the 1-3 here was there were 3 running backs I wanted, and I thought Taylor was actually going to be the guy who was there for me at 3, and he went at 2. So Taylor is heads and tails the number 1 for me. I would probably put J.K. Dobbins with the release of Mark Ingram as the number 2. There's going to be guys I forget. DeAndre Swift would have been so much higher if that team wasn't falling apart around him. Mm-hmm. I think CEH is going to have a bounce back, but I would probably put, if I'm not forgetting anybody, I think I would put Cam Akers number 3. Then just because of the offense, CEH, DeAndre Swift, and I'd throw Zach Moss in there at 6. I don't think I'm forgetting any. Well, I mean, there's James Robinson. If I knew James Robinson had the job next year, I think he would jump up to number 3 on the list pretty easily for me, even ahead of Cam Akers. But yeah, that's definitely JT and Dobbins first for me. And then it's a big lump in the middle, depending on what you're looking for the rest of them. To be perfectly honest, there's not a big gap outside of maybe Zach Moss, because Devin Singletary's still there and Josh Allen's the best goal line running back in the NFL. So,
Ryan, I wanted to ask you this because it's a real question for me. I thought about taking Zach Moss there at the 6. I went ahead with the Chuba Hubbard pick just for the upside on the rookie slot. James Robinson has been such a controversial name that we've been throwing around the last couple of episodes. And how do you foresee Jacksonville shaken out right now? You'd said if we knew his job was safe, what are you looking out for in the draft, Jacksonville potential moves? What could make that shifting for you? If they drafted another guy, or what are you looking out for?
So there's two things I'm looking out for with Jacksonville. Number one is if Curtis Samuel signs there. And I understand they have LaVisca Chenault, but Curtis Samuel, Urban Meyer have a history. If Curtis Samuel went there, I think they're less likely to blow an early pick on a running back because they're going to be able to use Visca. They're going to be able to use Curtis Samuel, and that's actually great for James Robinson. It's going to hurt his passing game work a little bit, but all in all, it's really good for him. If Curtis Samuel doesn't go there, then obviously I, first of all, love Visca. I love Visca as long as Curtis Samuel doesn't end up there. I think that's the kind of guy that Urban Meyer is just going to have a blast with. If he doesn't end up there, I don't see a way they don't go after, and I'm going to be honest with everybody here, I do not dig into rookie tape the way other people dig into rookie tape until they find their landing spots. I really don't care until they find their landing spots. So I'm not going to give a perfect example because I don't have a perfect example. There are people far smarter than me who are doing this. If a good pass catching back ends up there, he's going to eat in that Urban Meyer offense. And I think he's eventually probably going to take that job from James Robinson because Urban Meyer loves versatile backs and James Robinson is not quite that. James Robinson still could be a touchdown problem when that team gets better. And I don't know how great they're going to be with a rookie quarterback, this, that, and the other. But I think if they end up with a versatile running back, and I do think they'll be looking for a versatile running back, I think it's really going to hurt James Robinson.
So if there was an Austin Eckler type that went ahead and joined,
exactly,
all of a sudden that ends up becoming the 1B. In a year, he's the 1A.
You're perfectly. Eckler is the best example because it's exactly what happened to Melvin Gordon. Eckler went from a guy who the NFL, the fantasy Twitter at least, always viewed as a 2, and he eventually took that job. And that's not going to, man, you guys just can't make this decision for me, and I don't know which one to take. I'm just going to throw this out here. I've been waiting for someone to take either Lamar Jackson or Justin Herbert. And
I've been doing the same thing.
I know.
I don't know which one to take.
I'm going to go with my heart and take Justin Herbert and get him off the board. So hopefully
good. That makes it
man, I was really hoping no one would bring up the Lamar Jackson thing because I'm like, wait, I was literally just looking. I'm like, 7th round. I was going to wait on quarterback, but Lamar Jackson is there in the 7th round. What am I missing? And
literally what was going through my head. So when in the 6th round, when I took Adam Thielen, I was like, I should take my quarterback now because I want one of these two, but I'm going to wait and hopefully both of them don't go and we'll see what happens. And they both come back to me. But yeah, if a pass catcher ends up there, and as I brought up, Austin Eckler is the perfect example. No one thought he was going to be a 1, and I understand things didn't go great last year, but when he was on the field, he looked good. No one thought he was going to be a 1, and he can be a 1. He just needs a compliment. And that's what could end up happening in Jacksonville is that there's going to be a pass catcher that is going to start off as the B, take over the A, and all of a sudden you're going to have Robinson be the B.
For sure. And maybe like Aaron Jones ends up potentially shifting.
Oh, that would break my heart because that's not where I want him. I want him in Miami so bad.
Let me ask you about this one. This was another controversial pick, and I'm really curious about this. You had J.K. Dobbins as your number 1 sophomore running back just now on our straw poll rankings that you just pulled out and described so eloquently. Does the reality of John Harbaugh seemingly having 4 active running backs all the time, whether it's, Justice Hill and he brings in another guy, and Mark Ingram's always there, but there's so many other ones. Gus Bus has been running around for a while there. And there's even more names that in the last 5 years, John Harbaugh has just had so many running backs. He doesn't seem to be one of the guys who enjoys a one type of running back system. So do you see any of that history impacting J.K. Dobbins' ceiling, or do you just think J.K. Dobbins is such a great running back year 2, just we're unleashing him and the ceiling's taken off and he's going to be an RB1?
It's not going to be a full unleash. I fully expect them to bring Gus Edwards back. I believe he's still a restricted free agent unless I missed that they re-signed him already. I fully expect them to bring Edwards back, but Ingram gone. We kind of saw Dobbins. I'm going to throw a number out. I think he was like the RB8 in the last 6 games or something like that. Like he really took off when they kind of like sent Ingram out to pasture and just kind of gave up on him. I don't know that Harbaugh's ever had a running back like Dobbins, and I don't see him shying away from that. John Harbaugh's been in the league long enough. He's a smart guy. He knows. I mean, it's the same thing. He had changed his offense completely to make Lamar Jackson work. And
when I think about like not to cut you off, Ryan, but
No.
like when he had Forsett and Forsett was aging, but then Forsett came in and he's just like, okay, here we go. Like we're rolling with this because he's good enough. Like I think yes, he has had stables when he's had to, but he's also had the eye for talent when he's had it too, and knowing when to just surrender that to the talent.
Completely agree.
So we're coming up here. I do want to give our audio-only listeners out there a rundown of who we've gotten to at this point. So I'm going to try to get these every couple of rounds, but excuse me on getting a little bit behind here. Last time we closed off with David Montgomery in the third. We got James Robinson, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Travis. How do you say his last name?
ETN.
ETN. Travis ETN. Maybe to Jacksonville? Is that a possible one that would take away from James Robinson?
Yeah.
That would be perfect. That would be a match made in heaven, which means it's not going to happen.
Which is not good, and not a match made in heaven necessarily for James Robinson rosters,
No.
right? And that's the big point there of where that could be gone. So we'll see about that. But we just saw, getting back to Travis, ETN off the board, followed by Terry McLaurin, AJ Dillon, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Chris Carson, DJ Moore, DJ Chark, and Kyle Pitts closing out the fourth round. Trevor Lawrence, the holy one, starting out the fifth, followed by Darren Waller, Devontae Williams, Devonta Smith, Mike Evans, Chase Claypool, Kareem Hunt, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Deontay Johnson, Mark Andrews, and Brandon Ayuk to close the fifth. We saw the sixth start with rookie incoming running back Chuba Hubbard, followed by Myles Gaskin, Kenny Galladay, Deshaun Watson, Juju Smith-Schuster, TJ Hawkinson, Julio Jones, Ronald Jones, Kenyon Drake, Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, and Melvin Gordon to close out the sixth. Leonard Fournette to start out the seventh, Cortland Sutton, followed by Justin Herbert, Cooper Kupp, Lamar Jackson, Rashad Bateman, Russell Wilson, Raheem Mostert, Jalen Waddle, Terrace Marshall, Tyler Lockett, and Zach Moss to close out the seventh, with Laviska Shenault starting the eighth, followed by Michael Pittman, Kenneth Gainwell, and Rondale Moore here. Jacob Bley now is making his 8th round selection. Number one fan there. I think we got it all.
Well done.
I did forget to throw
and picking at the same time.
I did forget to throw Antonio Gibson in my sophomore rating. Yeah, don't know how I missed him. I'd probably put him ahead of Dobbins, so I would go JT, Gibson, Dobbins. So
yeah, I can't believe I even missed. I didn't even say JT in the initial question.
Yeah, I was gonna say you missed JT, and I'm like,
I did.
But that's probably because he was the second pick of the draft. So
Exactly.
you're
Right. I was just gonna say because he's in that first round. The other guys are all going around the same cluster, kind of.
God, I am so excited about Jonathan Taylor. I got my hype flare is going. He's one of those guys I'm like, you know what, guys? I know Jonathan Taylor shouldn't go 1-1 in redrafts, but watch me fly.
Taylor will be my first round pick in any draft where I don't own the 101 and grab McCaffrey. He will be my first round pick. In
Jonathan
any
Taylor's hype is intoxicating. I mean, just having him last year in a lot of redraft leagues where you're just waiting around for him, and then it finally it clicked, and it clicked in such a major way. Yeah, he's going to be a hype beast this offseason. We're just going to watch that.
Got the line, no real competition behind him, but enough people behind him that they can spell him and still collect first downs.
Yep.
I got a question for you guys. I got 50 seconds on the clock. Will Fuller or OBJ? If I go OBJ, it's very Cleveland Browns offense heavy. But is OBJ dead? Is OBJ dead? Like, is he done? Or
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think
he wants to be. I think he wants to be great. I think he enjoys the position he has in society right now, and he knows how easy it is to lose it. I don't think he wants to become a Sammy Watkins. I think he wants to be a dude. I think he wants to keep hanging out with LeBron James.
I'm gonna go.
And he's got he's so like charismatic. He's got such ways to make money outside of football. It's not just a paycheck, to your point, Austin. Like it's definitely he strives for greatness inside there. I know that.
I wonder if he's in Cleveland next year. That's the kind of the big thing with him. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe he does get traded. He's been rumored to be traded. There have been rumors that Cardinals might be one of those teams that he gets traded to. Could you imagine that? OBJ and Hopkins?
This is pure speculation and pure drugstore psychologist, but I think that you actually see a good marriage, a good relationship with OBJ and Cleveland next year. And what I mean by that is I think that Cleveland has upped their status to meet OBJ's perceived status. They had coach of the year last year. Baker Mayfield again to close out the year. They might have the best running system in the game with 2 legit star running backs. Like Cleveland's kind of a hot spot, and all they really need is a hot wide receiver with Jarvis Landry, who's right there, but OBJ wants to be that guy. And I think there's enough of a challenge that it's like, hey, you're good. We all know you're good. Right now, it's the best situation actually in the entire NFL. Like,
I love that point, Austin. And it's like he got to be from the outside looking in at what Cleveland did. He got to be injured and see like, oh shit, they were kind of better without me.
Yep.
And so can I come back and play team ball and rise to that? You know, I think he can. I think he's got it within his options. And I think the way that he demands, just as talent wise, he demands targets will be good for his fantasy prospects. But then I think the injury and looking from the outside in could do really well for his psyche.
Well, that was the whole knock, right? Because it was like Colin Cowherd or whatever created that whole buzz about, Cleveland's better without. Yeah, I know, right? But he was talking about how OBJ just like drags the offense and they try to force feed him and things like that. And I don't know that I 100% agree. I just think that they need to get on the same page. We just generally see that, and I think that, like to Travis's point, he got a viewpoint from the outside in, and this whole time you've always seen Baker be like, no, that's not true with the whole OBJ makes
like
us worse.
Back.
Yeah. And so I do think to my colleague's point that OBJ could come back, and it's kind of that whole like, Aaron Rodgers, all right, you want to disrespect me, you want to say I'm done, I'll show you exactly how good. Yeah.
I'm going to make a lot of enemies out of a lot of Cleveland sports fans as well, because that narrative has been, I'm as I mentioned, I'm from Northeast Ohio, still live in Northeast Ohio. And the Browns are better without an OBJ narrative because Cleveland, very blue collar town. They don't want to like Odell Beckham Jr.
A prima donna type.
I think it's such a trash narrative. They were better when Baker Mayfield isn't forcing the ball to OBJ, but no one is forcing Baker Mayfield to force the ball to OBJ.
Right.
Like, Baker Mayfield needs to make good decisions, which he started to do. If he can carry that good decision-making, obviously OBJ is a superstar, at least in his own mind, and he's not going to love not getting 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns. He's going to love making the playoffs every year, playing with a competent quarterback, playing in Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, the playoffs, the Super Bowl if they play their cards right, because that is a well-built team around them, and he makes them better. It makes no sense to say that one of the top 10 talents at the position somehow makes a team worse. It's a terrible take.
They just got to get their energies right. And I think with Baker Mayfield, he's got big energy too. And he fits into, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Cleveland kind of prototypical star, right? Like
very much so.
He's not a big drama guy, but low key, he really is a big drama guy. This guy gets in trouble with the cops. This guy gets in trouble with his opponents. He gets trashed on for taking too many commercials. Like, Baker Mayfield has got a lot of flair for the dramatic in his own right. Odell Beckham has a ton of flair for the dramatic too. And I think they both have big egos. And you saw 2 years ago or last year, Baker Mayfield like intentionally not even looking at OBJ. And you saw a couple of points where it's like, you two are playing an ego game right now.
Yep.
And I think they both grew up in a sense, and Baker especially, and learned how to win games, did what needed to be done. And then to your point, Ryan, like, you're not better taking an elite talent off the field. Now, if their energy is running amok, fine. But if they can just get their arrows pointing in the same direction.
Yeah, if it's a locker room problem, that's something completely different. But.
Right. I think they just might have grown up enough and might be in line that we could see some magic come out of Cleveland right now, because they are a run first team anyways.
And that's the one thing I was going to say is I'm so glad you threw the run first team thing in there. When we say magic, we mean great NFL football. It might not be fantastic for fantasy, so keep that in mind when you're grabbing Odell Beckham. But if you're grabbing Odell Beckham, let's just talk about how the mighty have fallen. You kind of brought up Juju Smith-Schuster not that long ago as a guy who was universally the 101 in startup drafts. Odell Beckham was that before Juju Smith-Schuster was that. You're now getting Odell Beckham in some cases as your wide receiver 3. The perceived value there is through the roof if he ever gets back to just being half of what he was. I mean, it's incredible to where he's not. You're going to have big games. I don't want to quite liken him to Tyler Lockett, but you're going to have big games. You're just not going to have as many big games, because hopefully the Browns aren't as bad as the Giants were when Odell Beckham scored 12 touchdowns in 12 games or whatever it was.
Those are really good takes there.
Oh, man, that's who I wanted. Next round.
Damian Harris?
Yeah, I was looking at him. I was looking at him or Marquise Brown. I thought Damian Harris would be there next round, so I went with Marquise, and now I'm regretting it.
That's the game you play.
No, it was the gamble.
Is what's the outlook for the Patriots? What needs to happen in New England for anybody to actually have significant fantasy value?
Tom Brady has to walk back through.
To come back.
Well, I assume you guys saw the story today that, or maybe it was yesterday, that Jimmy Garoppolo is plan A for them at quarterback, which I find super interesting because like he doesn't play for them. So,
What's going to be funny is, watch Bill Belichick would like just offer like a 5th round for Jimmy G, right? And then it's just like, that's exactly Bill Belichick. He got a 2nd rounder for Jimmy G, and then he like 3 years later when he needs him, he's like, oh, I'll just give you a 5th rounder and I get him back. Thanks.
I say it would certainly play into the chess and checkers metaphor that everybody uses for Belichick at that point.
Yeah, does that change at all after Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl and Belichick misses the playoffs? Is he actually playing Connect 4?
I'm not that down on Belichick. You had 3 of their best defensive players opt out due to COVID-19 before the season even started. You got wide receivers just everywhere that couldn't catch. I mean, we laugh because we look at Julian Edelman as this like prototypical slot wide receiver. Well, first of all, he couldn't stay healthy last year, and that's through no fault of his own. He kills himself every chance he can to catch a football.
Yeah,
that guy, I think he led the league in drops in 2019. Like, he drops a lot of balls. He is not the quarterback's best friend that we like to pretend he is. And they really had no reliable wide receivers. You had Cam Newton, who did everything he could, and my co-host Joe Zolo would kill me for giving Cam Newton any praise. He thinks he's absolute trash. But Cam Newton doing everything he could to help them win 7 games or whatever it was they won. And nobody else was helping him. They need a complete overhaul. And I'll be honest, I don't know what their cap situation looks like. I don't think it's going to get any better next year.
Matt chiming in here with the Baker Mayfield stuff, saying Baker has too much of an ego. If OBJ throws him ball, Baker tells him to screw off. I don't know about that.
In some ways that could work out great. In some ways that could work out very, very poorly. Like,
so far, the best case for OBJ is to have Jarvis Landry throw him the football. So work on doing. No, I kid, but
I joke, I kid.
Hunter
it's
Henry
such a
or Noah
talented
Fant
team
in a dynasty startup.
I'd probably take Hunter Henry.
I want to too. He's got a little shiny.
But I want to take.
He's a free.
That's my biggest concern. What if Hunter Henry signs in New England?
Yeah, like, he could not even re-sign it.
If Plan A happens,
if Plan A.
There you go. It's Plan A. I think I'd go Fant. Clearly, Austin went Henry.
I just went with what would make me feel better right now. If this was a real one, I would have ironed this out. But it's like the coin toss question, where it's like, it's like flip a coin. And then when that coin is spinning midair, who you actually want.
Yeah,
that's all of a sudden. And I'm like, in a mock draft, sometimes I just need to be honest with my emotions, because then it allows me to work through them on the other side. If I can say I have an inflated opinion of Hunter Henry because 2 years ago he won me a certain game, and I'm still holding on to that as if it's significant. Like, that's how I iron this out right here. And let me get Matt, who's been grilling my butt this whole time in the chat here, like, if you can bring some honest criticism this way and be like, that's a good point. Then in a real draft, you iron these things out, and that's the beauty of the mock drafts. We can get better throughout the space. I'll take part.
Matt's not just been grilling you, man. He's been in that chat. But then I asked him, I said, hey, are we drafting with you right now? And he said, no, but I'll be on next week so you can grill my picks then. So he knows it's coming. He's got the advantage being on the outside this time.
Yep, right here.
There we go.
There you go, man.
You bring up a good point with Hunter Henry and him winning you a game a few years ago. There's this whole psychological theory on how we value things that we already own far more than we value things that we don't own.
That sunk cost fallacy.
Yes, that plays into fantasy football trades so much. There is a guy in my league who's had Julio Jones basically since he started. It's a 3-keeper league. It's been long past the time for him to move Julio Jones, but he values Julio like Julio is still this shiny new Ferrari. And I'm no disrespect to Julio. fantastic player, but he's had value offers that he just keeps turning down because the value we're offering can never match the value that is in this guy's head for Julio Jones. And it's because Julio's already on his roster. And I've even brought up to him, flip the script, dude. If someone was offering you Julio for those 3 players, would you say yes? And he's like, no. And I'm like, exactly. Then why are you turning down people offering you 3 players for Julio Jones? Like, make the move, man.
Oh my gosh. Life is scary, but what happens if something's different? What happens if that's the worst thing? And then like all your friends, they just think less of you and you think less of yourself. And then you have, it's such a messed up, stupid game that ends up happening. The psychological weight we add to previous.
I was going to say, yeah, you don't get credit for those games anymore.
No. Well, none of that. I was that reminds me. I was reading a Reddit story a couple months back, and it was the same thing where the guy was trying to talk to Team B and was involving a player, and it was actually Terry McLaurin. Ironically enough, he was the guy had no interest in Terry McLaurin, thought he was trash, all this stuff, right? So he ends up trading Terry McLaurin. Team A trades Terry McLaurin, let's say, to Team C. And then Team C ends up trading and then a package. And in that package is Terry McLaurin to Team B, right? So Team A was like, okay, well, I was trying to offer this guy Terry McLaurin a few weeks ago, said he was trash. And so now I can probably get him cheaper than, because he doesn't like him. He said he goes to Team B and is like, hey, I'd like to trade you for Terry McLaurin. And then all of a sudden the guy was like, oh, he's a first rounder. Like, that's what inflates the price.
Now.
Yeah. And it's like, oh man, the psychological game that is fantasy football. Gotta love it.
That's the hardest thing to overcome is that we're always just going to value the things that are on our team far more than we value the ones that aren't. And so you have to be careful. And it kind of goes back to our very first story from this entire mock draft is reach for your guy, because if your guy ends up on a team that doesn't love him as much as you, now that he's on their team, they love him way more than you ever loved him.
And then it just hurts. It's like when your crush is now with that jerk guy, and you're like, he doesn't even value her.
Exactly.
Like, he doesn't even know.
You don't
movie
deserve
ever.
Jonathan Taylor.
The cheerleader girlfriend and the QB boyfriend, and then the guy on the side who just wants her. Yeah,
it's funny. I literally think I may have said to a human being last year that they don't deserve Jonathan Taylor. So we're hitting some nerves here.
Well, you know what, Ryan? They don't. All right, they didn't.
Exactly.
Well, let's take a look at who everybody here does now have on their team and disproportionately values now that they have a tangible relationship with them. I started the 8th round here with Laviska Shenault, Michael Pittman, followed by Kenneth Gainwell. I already got these guys. We're going to run it back here. Rondell Moore, Dak Prescott, Odell Beckham, Joe Burrow, Chase Edmonds, Michael Carter, Tyler Boyd, Deebo Samuel, Will Fuller. Aaron Rodgers kicked off the 9th round, followed by Denzel Mims, Jalen Hurts. I like that one. Tylen Wallace, Henry Ruggs, Jamar Jefferson, Marquise Brown, Robbie Anderson, Damian Harris, Jarvis Landry, Trey Sermon, and Hunter Henry there closed out the 9th round. We're almost here done with the 10th. We got Ryan on the board here. But I started the 10th off with Devontae Parker, followed by Nyheim Hines, Devin Singletary, Darnell Mooney. I thought about taking him. Tony Pollard, Corey Davis, David Johnson, Noah Fant, Jamison Crowder's off the board. Thought about him too. And Ryan is making his pick to go after Jalen Hurts. And we're doing 16 rounds here for our startup fantasy football mock draft, and no kickers, no defense for Whisper Nation listening.
I'm just going to throw this out there because it's just seemingly going to be inevitable. But apparently Corey Davis is just going to be like one of my guys this year because I've taken him in every mock draft, not intentionally. I just think he's going so late. And I do understand he's like a free agent right now, so he could go to a different team. There could be a lot of moving parts. That could potentially be exciting, I will add. But let's just say he does stay in Tennessee. I feel like he has arrived to be maybe I don't think he's ever going to be like that wide receiver one that we thought or Tennessee thought that they were going to get. But I think he's a very solid wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2, depending on the matchups on a week-to-week basis. And I feel like he's going so late in drafts. And to me, he finished as a top 24 wide receiver last year. So I don't understand why so many people are hating on him.
Well, I was going to say, now that you've anointed yourself the premier ambassador, where would you like to see Corey Davis end up? Is staying in Tennessee what you're hoping for? Or?
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were telling me in the draft. Where do I want? I was like, I want him to
in the
staying
13th
here
round.
Because I'll pick him up all day there. No, but Tennessee. I think that they just have a nice rapport there. I think I like what they're doing as far as with AJ Brown, and Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill seems to have a good rapport. I think he is an underrated quarterback as well, and so I think that a nice place is still to remain in Tennessee. That's my number one hope, is that he stays there, because then he doesn't have to learn a new playbook. That would concern me. I would actually probably be a little bit more concerned if he goes to another team, to be honest with you, because it's that whole second year or first year in a new offense and stuff. Most wide receivers don't generally tend to produce right away. I know we had some cases last year where that didn't exactly pan out. Hopkins and Diggs both went to new teams and balled out, but generally the rule is wide receivers are a little bit slower going to a new team. But where do you think? You think he's going to stay in the same place? Or?
I think he's likely to stay. There's one team I think could tempt him, and I think it's because he can come way more affordable. And the team I'm going to mention is everybody's probably favorite landing spot for every wide receiver, but I think Davis could be the most affordable for them. If he were to go to Green Bay and be the wide receiver 2 opposite Davante Adams, with Allen Lazard also being a free agent right now, I think that would be perfect to put him. Tannehill's been great, and I don't want to diminish anything Tannehill's done, but Aaron Rodgers takes accuracy to another level. And Davis has always been with these quarterbacks, Mariota, who was supposed to be hyper accurate, but just couldn't do anything with the ball. Tannehill, who is a hyper accurate quarterback, but Davis is clearly the beta on that team. And then you have Derrick Henry, who's the alpha of all alphas to go along with AJ Brown, to where if he goes to Green Bay, they're going to run the football, but they're going to let Aaron Rodgers do what Aaron Rodgers does. And he doesn't have to be the main guy. And the amount of extra coverage that Davante Adams demands, I think that could work out really well for Corey Davis. So of all the places I'd like to see him land, I would get excited again if he ended up in Green Bay.
Last take on Corey Davis, because I want to know what you guys think of this. What do you predict to be Corey Davis's finishing in the 2021-2022 season if he goes to Chicago and Allen Robinson's gone? So Mooney's there. Corey Davis lands over there too. Who's the one? We'll find out. And the quarterback right now, it stays Trubisky. Where does Corey Davis finish in January next year?
That's an interesting question.
Top 20. Robinson was what, wide receiver 11 on the year?
Yeah, 9 in PPR, but yeah.
9 in PPR. So I would. That's a great question.
Because here's the why, and that's the frame. While you're thinking about it really quick, because Allen Robinson, we saw what a true number one talent, not an elite talent, but maybe some guy who's really, really good in Allen Robinson at the level that he was able to produce, with a quarterback who's got his ups and downs. Mooney's on the rise. Corey Davis has question marks. So the question is Corey Davis just a jag? Is he just a guy who's going to fall into the mix and he can play all right for whatever team he's on? Or is there an actual opportunity for Corey Davis to show that he's working with more than maybe we've given him credit for, outside of him being taken in the first round, and he could actually level up into a back-end wide receiver 1, maybe respectable wide receiver 2?
Wow, we got Joe Zolo and Matt both think that he would be terrible, that he wouldn't even finish top 40.
It's very rare that I ever agree with Joe. Joe's my co-host, for those who don't know. I wouldn't quite go as bad as top 40, but I think top 30 would definitely be a cap for him, mainly because I don't see him ever demanding the target share that Allen Robinson would demand. Mooney and Anthony Miller would just cut into that.
The talent gap is a lot of it too for me. I think that Allen Robinson's just an overall much more complete wide receiver in a lot of ways.
I think Corey Davis. I don't know, man. I when he's gotten peppered with targets, he produced. Remember a couple of years ago with Mariota, and Mariota was like peppering him with targets, and he was
right. And Allen Robinson has consistently demanded targets every step of the way.
Right.
Like Allen Robinson is what Corey Davis wants to be.
hold on. I will. I'm saying what I'm
just
saying. The thing was Allen Robinson wasn't anything until he had one good season before he went to the Bears. He had one good season, and then he goes to the Bears, and now he gets peppered with targets because the opportunity is there. I'm saying Corey Davis is no slouch. He was a top 10 wide receiver picked off the board. I believe Tennessee picked him with the number 9 pick or number 7 pick, if I can recall correctly. And so it's not like he's a slouch and like he could be we thought maybe last year was going to be his breakout season with Devontae Parker, like Devontae Parker had the previous year. And honestly, he kind of had it. Looking at his stats, like he had a very solid year. And so I'm just curious, if he is the number 1 guy, why do we think so much that he can't produce if he's given all the targets, presumably that Allen Robinson? I mean, even if he got 90% of Allen Robinson's targets, Allen Robinson's getting over 120 targets.
Okay, but you actually brought up something really good. The year Corey Davis was peppered with targets was 112 target season. I just went and looked. He finished as the wide receiver 28. So that kind of plays right into what I was thinking is he'll be right around cracking the top 30. Now, could we see him jump up to 125, 130? I think it's possible. I'd have to dig way more into Darnell Mooney. I also am just using the Bears as an example, and I know we've kind of been doing this with the thought that it'll be Trubisky at quarterback. I think it's much more likely to be Nick Foles at quarterback. I think the Bears seem to want to move on from Trubisky, and I think they probably, just putting it bluntly, upset Trubisky just with how this whole situation's been handled. And I know it's kind of hilarious to think, oh, we upset Mitch Trubisky. Oh, no. But when you're looking at just Nick Foles, that could be a thing. But I've also heard the Bears might be a front runner, and I understand it's all rumors at this point. The Bears might be a front runner for Deshaun or Russell Wilson, and then that changes everything. But then are those guys going to go there if Corey Davis is their 1? So there's just
are there
kind of
any
a lot that plays in that.
I love the take on this, and I would have to agree kind of to Corey Davis, and I've drafted Corey Davis in the last couple of years in redrafts, and so I know where Johnny's with it. And I would love to be surprised next year and actually see him make an impact. I'm not holding my breath out on that one, but I am curious of what guys we should hold our breath on. Maybe Ryan, like, is what we know there's a lot of transition that's about to come up in the NFL. What players that are maybe even available still in this draft right now or have gone here in these double-digit rounds or later on that we should be thinking of seeing an upgrade come either from their own personal development, or you're expecting the team they play for to make a change at quarterback, or you're expecting to see that player change teams and be in a better opportunity, and now they're really going to make an impact fantasy-wise.
I think one guy to watch out for, and he's way low in ADP right now, and he has every right to be, is Antonio Brown if Chris Godwin chases a paycheck. I am of the firm belief that no other team in the NFL is going to take a chance on Antonio Brown. I think he is tied to Tom Brady, and I'm really interested to see what happens when Brady retires, because Brown theoretically should have more years left on him. I think he's tied to Tom Brady. I think he's back in Tampa. If Godwin walks and Brown is straight up the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1B to Mike Evans, that could be magical for fantasy, and he is in a tremendous value. Another player, just using your example of players who are available in this draft, he's actually, I'll be perfectly honest, he's my next pick if he makes it to me. Sterling Shepard is a guy who demands 8 targets per game, does quite well when he gets those 8 targets per game. Everybody wants to hate Daniel Jones right now, and believe me, rightfully so. But I do feel like that Giants offense is going to produce decent wide receivers. I do think that, Evan Ingram just went, and I think Evan Ingram is going to continue to benefit now that Jason Garrett has an idea of how to use him. But Sterling Shepard, especially with the recent release of Golden Tate, Darius Slayton took an enormous step back from year 1 to year 2. And I think that was because a lot of people finally had tape on him because he kind of came out of nowhere as a rookie. So Sterling Shepard's a guy who I would really love to see how his development's going to come. And what's funny is he's a complete 180 for me. I was very, very, very low on Sterling Shepard coming into last year, mainly because of how high I was on Darius Slayton. I've slowly started to turn, and Steffi Smalls, who's a superstar in the industry, wrote an article, I think about a month ago, about why it's time to start believing in Sterling Shepard again and kind of hanging on to him. And he's a guy who I'm looking to acquire, especially in these later rounds of drafts. Super cheap. Draft cost or draft capital to get him.
He definitely has the talent, right? Out of Oklahoma, was Sooner. And so, yeah, it just, I think, has to do with health and, Danny Dimes, stepping it up realistically and being able to be a little bit more accurate. But yeah, I've always liked Sterling Shepard as a wide receiver. It will be interesting to see if he can be a little bit more consistent, but you like the consistent targets 100%.
Another guy who I just noticed went super late, and he's been going late in a ton of your mock drafts. And of course, Jacob Bley got him. Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson was so good. And I understand DJ Moore Love. I took DJ Moore super early. DJ Moore Love is going to rule the day, but Curtis Samuel's likely gone at this point, and they're going to have some younger wide receiver 3 in there. Robbie Anderson has already shown us he can succeed in that offense with a Teddy Bridgewater that did not look great. To where if they are one of these teams that go out and get a quarterback, which is a heavy rumor, like they have made it very public that they no longer are in love with Teddy Bridgewater. Robbie Anderson's a guy in that offense, an offense that he probably still remembers a lot of from college with his head coach. He did very well in year 1, and he's a guy who I can only see improving in year 2, but we're acting like he's going to step right back into his New York Jets inconsistency role.
I love kind of a wild ADP, right? Like why is he so down? Like he did it with, sorry, Austin, I didn't mean to cut you off. He did it with so many different ways too. Like he wasn't the one trick pony we had seen in New York. He was an over the middle guy. He was an underneath guy, and he did it and almost to the chagrin of DJ Moore a lot of last year.
Yeah, I definitely to the chagrin of DJ Moore managers. Sorry,
I just want to double down on the Robbie Anderson one. I feel like there's always this bit of speedy, tall New York Jets wide receivers. I developed this infatuation with Robbie Anderson a couple years ago and Brashad Perriman last year. But just these guys who are, like mid to late 20s in terms of like they're still coming in with the same abilities that they did when they were rookies. Like I'm not concerned about the regression of a 26 or a 27-year-old wide receiver. I'm just not. And Robbie Anderson is a lot taller, a lot faster, with a lot longer limbs than a lot of people gave him credit for over there dealing with the inconsistent play in New York. And we saw a little bit of what he was able to do with Carolina. And I am not surprised if we see a resurgence in the career of Robbie Anderson moving forward, where all of a sudden he starts becoming like a player in the NFL, not just a guy who bounces around, but a guy you can maybe rely on a little bit. So I love that you brought him up.
It's just interesting to me that his narrative, and you hit it so well on the head, he did it in so many different ways last year, but his narrative has not changed. As soon as he went there, they're like, well, he'll be the deep threat, but DJ Moore is going to steal all the targets. And it's like, that's not what happened. No. Why are we still telling the same exact story?
DJ Moore was like a phenomenal top of the league deep threat. Teddy Bridgewater just hates throwing the ball deep.
Exactly. And that's the thing is Robbie Anderson didn't have a quarterback who could play into his strengths last year, and he changed his game. If we get a quarterback all of a sudden that can play into their strengths, it's going to be better for Moore and Anderson.
Big time. I love that one.
I took your advice, Ryan. Drafted Antonio Brown in the 13th.
That is such a great take, dude. Like, that's the guy, because I got to say with this, like, we're playing drugstore psychologist on this one. When we look at these players who are able to extend their primes, it's dudes who are operating on just a different plane. Like Adrian Peterson comes to mind for me big time. Like, no, he's not the same level of production, but he is committed to his craft for whatever reason, whatever reason that motivates him to do it. Antonio Brown is in a similar boat. Like, this dude is just different, right, wrong, or indifferent. It just is the case. And I'm not surprised to see him stretch out his body to make what he's able to do at a high level into his mid 30s when another guy couldn't do that.
And one of your listeners, Matt, brought up a really great player in this same range, Brandon Cooks. Right now, he's the wide receiver 1 in Houston with literally zero competition. They have like Kiki.
Yeah, no one to throw him the ball either.
Yeah, that's fair, but we've seen fast wide receivers, specifically deep threat wide receivers, succeed with bad quarterbacks. As long as they get a strong arm in there, they're going to be down. Let's be clear. They're going to throw the ball 550 to 600 times next year. They're not going to have much of an option. And that's even with bringing in an offensive coordinator who wants to run Baltimore's system. Baltimore can run their system because they're winning every game. Houston is not going to be that system. So they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. And if Cooks is the only show in town, we're looking at 125 to 140 targets for a guy who can still score pretty much anytime he touches the ball. he could be an electric fantasy player. Now, I completely agree. They need to get somebody there. My co-host, Josh Hudson, loves to say it's going to be Robert Griffin going back there since he was released by Baltimore, just played with Cully in Baltimore, and then he's, of course, from Texas, and he's a huge star in Texas. Say what you will about RG3, still has a cannon for an arm, and that could play out well with Brandon Cooks. So
I like that take.
He didn't look bad at honestly when he had to fill in for Lamar Jackson. Well, the first time he was injured, right? And then when Lamar had to go into the bathroom, it wasn't RG3, but RG3 played some games and played some snaps and he looked pretty solid. I have always been a fan of RG3. I actually have an RG3 bobblehead that I picked up just because I'm a big fan and I've always rooted for him. I thought he was so fun. I really started to really get into fantasy football when RG3 was a rookie, and because I didn't see it coming, to be honest with you. I did not see that coming. And when he just kind of he was like Lamar Jackson before Lamar Jackson. Yeah. And then Lamar is actually more consistent. But it was so fun to watch RG3 and what he was doing, because it was Michael Vick-esque, but with a big arm. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I miss those days with RG3, man.
Before Shanahan I'm going to blame Shanahan for taking out his ACL and killing a lot of the trajectory and what happened there. RG3 was the most dangerous football player I personally ever witnessed play football. This was an Olympic hurdler, not just an Olympic like track athlete. We're talking like an Olympic hurdler, as Ryan put it, with a cannon arm. And it's just too bad that we saw the durability go away, because I had never seen a player more dangerous than RG3.
It was like watching Vic in his prime again, and that's just not something you get to see
as a rookie.
Often, so
right.
He was rookie of the year over Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck was not a disappointment. And Andrew Luck was the chosen one coming in, the best quarterback we'd seen in so long, and he didn't disappoint. RG3 was the rookie of the year.
Yeah.
Austin, I don't want you to time out. You're on the clock.
Thank you very much.
Joe chiming in saying that he loves Cooks, but if he's getting high-low coverage on him because the defense doesn't have to worry, he is in trouble.
Yeah, and to Joe's credit, Joe brought up the same thing about Tyreek Hill in the Super Bowl, and we saw that work. They throw that high-low on him. Now, obviously, they couldn't stop Kelsey, but who can? Right. But that's kind of what we were talking about way back. It was Joe kind of brought this up, but we were talking about way back with DK Metcalf. That high-low doesn't work on DK Metcalf because he's going to kill the low, and then the high is too far back. Brandon Cooks, you don't got to worry about that. Brandon Cooks isn't going to kill the low coverage, and when he does finally get past the low coverage, the high coverage is there. And that's something Joe's been preaching on our show for a while, that a lot of these fast guys, as long as you want to commit to taking them out of the game, it's not that hard. And the other problem is with Houston, as of this second, you can commit to taking Brandon Cooks out of the game. It's not going to kill you. David Johnson's going to run 30 times for 34 yards and a touchdown, and it's not going to matter much. But Brandon Cooks could legitimately hurt you, and could easily be taken out of the game.
Well, and that's what we talked about on last week with the snap football. And we were talking about why, when you do that, right, you talked about you normally go to Travis Kelce and he'll just dominate, and that's kind of how you beat it. But in the Super Bowl, Kansas City wasn't doing that. They were still like, no, we need to get this back so quickly. And that was like their downfall to that. So you're seeing it all kind of.
I think people who forgot how important offensive lines were very much reminded so if they watched the Super Bowl. And I mean, even me, I did not give offensive lines their credit, and Joe lays into me every week for this, that I thought Patrick Mahomes was going to be able to be the hero in this Super Bowl. I thought they'd get rid of the ball quickly. Apparently quickly wasn't quickly enough. Tampa Bay just abused them, and he was running for his life all day, made some of the most insanely athletic throws we've ever seen in football ever. You cannot question Patrick Mahomes' heart or arm talent one bit. But man, can you question Andy Reid for putting them in that situation where you knew you weren't going to have an offensive line and your game plan was still that bad. And I love Andy Reid. Andy, my son is literally named Donovan after Donovan McNabb from the Eagles. Huge Andy Reid guy.
Dude, that is awesome.
To Reed's
Kudos.
credit, he knew. Like, if you look at the pre-game like press conferences he was doing that week, he knew. He said it's going to be ugly, but we'll do what we can. I mean, I think he had a very good idea what his offensive line was up against, and they were just working with what they had.
Yeah, I just feel like you could have done something different. Like you kind of brought up. Yes, Kelsey put in work, but he didn't nail in the coffin the way he was. And I know everyone got on Mahomes at the end of that game because he literally threw his wide receivers under the bus that they weren't where they were supposed to be and they didn't catch what was thrown to them. And I know you're not supposed to do that as a quarterback, but show me the lie because it was ugly. So
it was almost like they had not enough time to handle the adversity that ended up coming their way, as where Tampa Bay was dealing with figuring their stuff out early on, and then they were able to come in playing their best football of the season. That Super Bowl matchup and those playoffs leading up to it is where the Chiefs have just been able to bail themselves out with exceptional talent. You're just not going to beat a talented defense like they went up against, who also is very well coached and prepared.
Yep, and that's hurt.
Yeah, it is.
It was an interesting game, and oh man, Troutman just went. I was really hoping to get him.
Troutman's really interesting, especially after they just dropped Cook.
Yeah,
tight ends. That's the thing we don't get to talk a lot about, especially here in a dynasty startup situation. Ryan, is there a how are we looking with the incoming tight end class? And one of the things I always look for is, when are we getting a tight end coming in the mix who's not going to be a just a guy tight end? We know that in redraft leagues, every year there's a whole bunch of guys that you can take with high upside, middle floor play late on in the drafts. And most of the time, most tight ends are that. Every once in a while, though, we get a Gronkowski talent. We get a TJ Hawkinson a little bit, might have been a recent case of that, who's on his way to be a legit player here. But is there anybody that's coming into the draft this year who you've got your eyes on, specifically at the tight end position?
I mean, again, I'm not big rookie guy, but you would have to imagine Kyle Pitts. What he's shown us in college, I can't see him falling into a just a guy situation. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It just seems very unlikely. With tight ends, I feel like landing spot is as important as any position. If you're not with the right quarterback who's going to utilize the tight end and the right offensive coordinator who's going to utilize the tight end, you're going to be used as a blocker. And I'm going to use as a prime example. The last big guy we thought was going to be great was OJ Howard. And the problem was he was such a damn good blocker, and they would rather have used him as a blocker, so they kept using him as a blocker, and he never fully fulfilled what we expected out of him in fantasy. And I think if Howard ends up somewhere else, that could be great. And if Pitts ends up on the wrong team where they're going to use him as a blocker, I'm just going to throw out like Pittsburgh as an example, who doesn't tend to utilize their tight ends. That could be very bad for him. And then we end up with another just a guy. Now, one thing I will say, when you're looking at Dynasty, I am a proponent of stream your tight ends forever and always. In Dynasty, that gets a lot harder, because everybody is drafting multiple tight ends, and you need to also draft multiple tight ends. Even if they're crap tight ends, you need to be able to play the matchups every week, and the free agency might not be there for you. We talked about you might be dealing with 25-man rosters. 25-man rosters in a 12-team league is 300 players being drafted. Wow. Most tight ends are going to be gone. Any tight end that's worth anything on a weekly basis is going to be gone. It's going to be a lot harder to stream. So what's interesting is if you drafted one early, a Darren Waller, a Travis Kelce, a George Kittle, you might only need to add one more tight end. If you drafted late, how I'm doing, or the gentleman right before me or the lady right before me, the News, you might need to add multiple. So the News' last three picks were Cole Kmet, Zach Ertz, Jonnu Smith. Towards this middle round, and this would be the middle rounds in a dynasty, that's an excellent way of approaching this, because you hope Kmet blows up. You hope Jimmy Graham gets released. You hope that Mitch Trubisky's back, or Nick Foles figures out how to play quarterback, or even better, Deshaun Watson's there. But then if he doesn't, you at least have Zach Ertz and Jonnu Smith, who you can throw in on a weekly basis. So don't be afraid to overdraft tight ends in a dynasty league. Use that tremendous roster to play your streaming game with your own team instead of with free agency.
That was so much more than I had bargained for when I asked this question. That was such a great take on it. And I agree with that all personally. My own one anecdote that I experienced firsthand with that in our Dynasty startup was taking Austin Hooper when he was still with Atlanta. And before he went down, he was the number 1 tight end in football. I was sitting so pretty, loved it. And then Cleveland takes that big old contract or signed him to a big old contract, and he's not making the same kind of impact that he was. Same guy, but different impact. And so you saw,
and that's a great example. Like Harrison Bryant was a highly rated tight end last year. Now, none of the tight ends last year did anything as rookies, but he goes to Cleveland where he's the 3rd guy on the totem pole, and we saw him flash a couple of games, but that's a terrible system for a rookie to end up in. And don't think everybody is loving Irv Smith now, and I'm not only the member of the fan club, I'm the president. Literally,
you write back the fan mail.
Exactly. Minnesota, if you don't believe they're considering Kyle Pitts, they are absolutely have to be considering him if they can get him to fall to them, because you just let Kyle Rudolph walk. You have 2 solid wide receivers. You do not have a 3rd wide receiver, and you run the 2nd most 2 tight end sets outside of Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is an entirely new scheme now, so they essentially will probably run the most 2 tight end sets in the entire NFL. I don't know that they love Tyler Conklin. He seemed like he was a decent play when Rudolph or Irv was out last year. But if Pitts is there and he's this generational talent, you put Irv and Pitts in the same offense, it's going to be scary, but it's going to be terrible for fantasy.
and that's a great point on pay attention to the drafts as this comes up. This is going to have huge impacts across the league, and getting started with your research now doesn't do you a disservice knowing it's going to shift. It just helps you better understand what teams are prioritizing, and where to maybe put more emphasis in the picks that you're selecting, or to prioritize certain guys over other situations.
Hey, Joe's coming for you, Ryan, with the trash emoji on Irv Smith. Man.
I feel like it's Wednesday night at this point with Joe just shooting down all of my takes, but he's usually right. So don't listen to me. But no, Austin, you hit a great point. And so as I mentioned numerous times, I don't dig deep into rookies until they land, but man, do I dig into landing spots, because if I know where I want a wide receiver to land and then I see what rookie lands there, all of a sudden I now know I like that rookie because he went to the perfect spot. And a perfect marriage of this last year is Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson coming into the draft was literally being compared to Stephon Diggs. And then he gets drafted by Minnesota and people seem to forget who we were comparing him to. And we look at how that mistake played out. I don't know exactly what his ADP was, but I can tell you it wasn't high enough. And so Justin Jefferson is a perfect marriage of landing spot and talent. But then for every good side of the story, there's a bad side of the story, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you could have not have picked a better landing spot for him than Kansas City. He kind of blew up in our faces. He wasn't as bad as we like to imagine he was, but he definitely wasn't as good as a guy who we were taking in the first round of fantasy drafts last year.
To that point, Damian Williams was taken by Jacob Bley in the 15th round. Excellent pick in the 15th. It was interesting because Sigmund Bloom texted out earlier this week about, Damian Williams, look for him on your waiver. And I honestly had kind of just written him off, right? Because I was looking at what they were doing with CEH and I was just trying to evaluate that. And so I tweeted at Sig and asked him like what he envisioned that backfield to be like. If it was either like a sprinkling of Williams, or do you think it was more of a 50-50 split? And he seems to think it's going to be a 50-50 split. So if that's the case, which, I could definitely see Damian Williams in the 15th. I know it's a startup and you don't know how long that pick is going to, but for a 15th pick to get a running back that's tied to a very good offense, Damian Williams is probably going to be a guy that I'll be targeting in a lot of late rounds of drafts because a lot of people forgot about him.
Yeah, I think that's very fair because, Andy Reid's made it clear he's not just going to lean on a guy. I think we probably saw the last of that with Andy Reid with Kareem Hunt. And when Kareem Hunt walked, I think he's just going to move it around. And then he saw the value of keeping guys healthy in the Super Bowl. So I don't see him making a change on that anytime soon.
So we're starting to come to the end. We're in our last round here, round 16 of our 12-team Dynasty Startup Draft. For those who are just joining the Mock Draft Monday show, for the first time, we're going to go through the end how we always do. Each one of our panelists will run through their team, giving a quick overview who they selected and why. Once we're done with those, Whisper Nation, let us know who did the best. Let us know who did the worst. Love to get that take. And then we will go through everybody else who drafted here's team with one of the panelists doing a rundown, giving their grade A through F. And then if another member of the panel has a stark contrast, we'll offer those ones up. We'll make sure that we get a chance to go through everybody who drafted alongside us, take a look at their team, give you our take, as well as taking your input on the guys that we selected as well. And if you're watching the show and you want to be a part of it, make sure you're following on Twitter. Johnny Game Time Hicks sends out the links to our sleeper room here before every Monday's show, so you can be a part of our actual drafting room with us. And then if you haven't liked and subscribed already on YouTube, what are you waiting for? We get daily content coming your way every single day, and so you just won't miss it because we know we're on top of the calendar, so you don't have to be. Just hit that like and subscribe button so it pops right up to your phone as it will. And hey, while you're clicking the like and subscribe button, Ryan, you want to tell them where the people can like and subscribe and follow all the great content you're putting out there in the world?
Absolutely. So you can find everything I do at the Fantasy 5. 5 is spelled out FIVE. I do most of my writing with the Fantasy Footballers. You know where to find the Fantasy Footballers. But I do my podcasting with Club Fantasy FFL. It's just at Club Fantasy FFL. We do a weekly Wednesday live stream. We do guests all throughout the off season. We're going to have you guys on soon. So like I said, it's a very cool little thing. We're breaking down the off season. I mean, I'm going to be honest. It's just like everyone else's, except we fight a lot on the podcast. But way more importantly than anything I'm doing, please go follow the Speakeasy FF. As I mentioned at the top of the show, it's International Women's in Sports Day or International Women's Day, and I've just butchered that, which just shows how much of an ass I am. But anyway, go follow the Speakeasy FF. We are highlighting the women of fantasy football right now, as we do at Club Fantasy all the time. Half of our staff are females. They kill it. They're way better than we are. Go follow that.
100% agree.
We'll love those takes. This is great stuff. Do what the man says. You'll be better for it. I promise you. I follow his advice, and I'm a better human being because of it as well. So Ryan,
links are also in the description below as well. I will put the other one in there as well further.
Appreciate that.
Yes.
Well,
all right.
So we'll go ahead and we'll break ours down first. I'm the one talking right now, so I'll go ahead and just set it off. I drafted the last 12th position in a 12-person draft, so I will start us off here. I took Patrick Mahomes at the 112 position. You lock that up, you're solid for the next 10 years, fingers crossed, barring health. Love to have that advantage for the rest of my days here, at least for a few of them. And I think DK Metcalf, obviously there's some dependence on Russell Wilson, but I just think that this man is committed to developing and upping his game. That route tree is going to continue to broaden, as does the branches on a tree that you take care of. I think he's going to take care of himself, and I think the team around him will too. So I love that selection there. I was without a running back there, so I needed to get a couple, and David Montgomery and James Robinson, both as of now lead dogs with no real competition behind them, but we know both of those guys could have some competition be coming in as soon as this draft, so I think that's why they were available. But hey, if the draft comes and goes and there's no one slotted behind them, I think I got a really good steal on two guys who are getting elite workload and both finished in the top 12. Brandon Ayuk is one of my favorite rookie wide receivers last year from a skill perspective, and I think the role on his team is pretty solid. Stoked about him there. Chuba Hubbard as an upside rookie play, and Zach Moss coming in as a second year. I think we're going to see more production out of Zach Moss than we did his rookie season. Hearing the points about Josh Allen as the best goal line back they've got, that's true. I think we've also just seen a lot of quarterbacks get hurt eventually taking that route, so hopefully they'll go ahead and start pounding the rock with their big bruiser back, but we'll see. But that's why he's available there in the 7th round. Laviska Shenault, another upside rookie play. I think he could benefit a lot from some improved quarterback play, which I hope to see with Trevor Lawrence coming in. Hunter Henry, he won me a game a couple of years ago, so I really am fond of taking him. Devontae Parker, we know the talent's there. He needs to stay healthy. We'll see what happens to the quarterback situation. I really do like the sneaky upside, though, he continues to bring. Michael Pirine currently slotted as the Jets starting halfback. He's a second-year halfback as well, which means I think he's going to take potentially a sneaky big jump. Don't love him and what he's about, but given the opportunity and a commitment to excellence with a new coach coming in, it could catch some people off guard and produce at a higher clip. Michael Gallup, Mike McCarthy calls him a wide receiver 1 last year. We know CeeDee Lamb's over there. We know that Amari Cooper is still there. This is a guy who I could see landing on another team and having a really successful time. He's 6'1", 25 years old. there's no real cause for concern as far as I'm concerned. It's just kind of shaky over there in Dallas. So Muck could clear away and some light could shine through. Darrell Henderson is going to be eclipsed by Cam Akers, but he could still get some work done. He might have been a bargain value there. And then my last 3 picks here with Tony, Patterson, and Hawkins were all just rookie dice rolls. We'll see where they land. We'll see what we got. Maybe we luck into a good situation. But no real expectations there other than they've got it's a dice roll with upside.
Like it.
I think for a build where you put Patrick Mahomes at the top here, and especially in the Dynasty startup, like you're set on quarterback for probably like the next, 10, 15 years, hopefully. And then you got to have some fun with some of these guys behind, like DK Metcalf, Ayuk. I thought that was really nice. And then just to kind of stack some potential. Devontae Parker I was eyeing there, and I kind of wish I would have taken him now instead of letting him fall to you over there. I really like the Devontae Parker pick. It might be my favorite pick on your roster here.
I think Henderson is sneaky value as well because it seems like Malcolm Brown's not going to be there. And if they go to a straight 2-headed monster at running back, you're going to see workloads increase for Akers and Henderson, and getting him that late is nice. So
right.
Yeah, I like what you did towards the end.
Try to get a team that could win now or at least produce pretty well now, but then also grow into itself and get better. I think I'm happy with what I pulled off.
Boom.
Pretty good.
All right.
I will go next. I had the 107 spot. That was I wanted to draft from the spot because that's where I drafted a few years ago for our startup, and I wanted to see how different I would have drafted, and I did quite differently. Nick Chubb at the 107. You guys know how much I love Nick Chubb, not only this year, but moving forward. I think he's great. DeAndre Swift, again, another big fan of DeAndre Swift. And I'm in that argument, like pick your favorite guy of those second-year running backs and go with that guy, whoever it is. If you have a reason for him, if it's Cam Akers, if it's Antonio Gibson, J.K. Dobbins, I think Jonathan Taylor, I think we're in a very good rookie class there. So I like DeAndre Swift a lot. And then I took Michael Thomas in the third. He was the best wide receiver in my eyes available. Quarterback situation is a little bit murky, but I think that they'll always use Michael Thomas. A.J. Dillon, Kareem Hunt were my 4th and 5th round picks there. Wanted to grab some more running backs. And then TJ Hawkinson in the 6th. I wanted to go tight end. Some of the big names have already come off the board. And I think that TJ Hawkinson is going to be one of those tight ends that will be a top 3 tight end for the next years to come. He's tremendous talent. Russell Wilson grabbed a quarterback in the 7th. Then I started grabbing value at the wide receiver position that I could. So OBJ in the 8th, we talked about him earlier. Marquise Brown in the 9th, Corey Davis in the 10th. I grabbed Alexander Madison in the 11th because I wanted to have an upside running back on the bench. And then Brian Edwards, Antonio Gibson in the 12th and 13th round. Rashad Penny, who knows what happens with that guy. I wanted to talk about him a little bit, but maybe a different show. Tyler Higbee and then Matt Ryan.
Every other show.
Yeah.
Every other draft. This man has taken Rashad Penny in every draft he possibly can since
you might have a shot this
4
time.
years ago. He always does.
When they say like, make sure you keep a lucky penny on you, like that's what he does. He just keeps Rashad Penny.
Hey, one of these times it's going to look like a genius pick. Okay,
dude. Yeah, but
not later.
Who knows? Hey, he's like my 18th pick, dude. He's my 14th.
I was going to say, where you got him, there's no shame whatsoever.
There's obviously history with this pick. And it sort of builds on itself every time when Johnny says Rashad Penny's name.
Yeah,
so. I like this team balance-wise. I think it's well put together. I just think it's very well balanced, and that tends to happen when you're drafting in the middle. We've talked about that over the last couple of weeks. When you draft in the middle, you can kind of not get caught reaching for any guy, particularly like you may get caught on the ends.
Grabbing Russell Wilson that late kind of just is the cherry on top.
Yeah, so. That was thanks to you guys because you took Lamar and Herbert, which were the 2 options that I wanted.
John, you got like this bad boy team going for it. They're like they're like it's kind of cool, and it's like it's a fun team right here. But like DeAndre Swift, I mean, we've said a lot of the things going on, but like with Kareem Hunt and Odell Beckham, OBJ, Antonio Brown, Marquise Brown. It's like some guys who like roll up into the club and you're a little intimidated, but then when they like maybe like a pop goes off, and those guys are the ones who are like the most scared They're like, you guys aren't actually as hard as you guys front to be. And they're like, no, man, we just like leather jackets.
There's one point you brought up that I want to throw out. And for people who don't play Dynasty, this is something to think about. You mentioned that you added Alexander Madison for kind of like late sneaky value. Mm-hmm. Another great move in doing that for me, who drafted Dalvin Cook, you now have an instant trade piece that I want. And so you and I can immediately start talking trades. And for those who haven't played Dynasty, another big part of trading in Dynasty is you're trading future rookie picks. Yeah. So he doesn't even necessarily have to love a player on my team.
Yeah.
He certainly loves my second round pick next year. And that's something he could just turn an 11th round pick this year into one of the top 20 rookies from next year. So
great point. I love that one.
And the value of that handcuff only goes up for the guy holding the handcuff. And the guy who's holding, in this case, Dalvin Cook, every game he gets more nervous if he's going to miss a game, if something's going to happen. And then Madison comes in and all of a sudden does so well, he starts earning actual work time. And then that Dalvin Cook guy's like, gosh, why didn't I get him when the value was lower?
All right, Big Travie.
All right, so I drafted from the 5th spot, half PPR, so I went with Alvin Kamara. I think, obviously we're a little bit worried if we have a situation where now I'm blanking on his name, where it's not Jameis Winston, but Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill.
And we saw what Taysom Hill did with Kamara, or lack of better words, didn't do. So there is some concern there, but I think that, should he be the starter, Sean Payton will find ways to make Taysom Hill get Alvin Kamara the ball. Like, that was a small sample size. I have to have faith in Alvin Kamara's talent here. Austin Eckler was my next pick. Just the youth there, the contract they gave him. Justin Herbert in the lineup did great things for Austin Eckler. I like the pick here. He was one of the better guys in the second round that I wanted to go with, someone established and I knew could be a vein of the offense. And then it was just 3 straight wide receivers that I knew were going to be, big parts of their offense. Calvin Ridley, Mike Evans in the 5th as my 3rd wide receiver, especially, Ryan, if Godwin does chase that paycheck. We saw Evans get it going with Tom Brady down the stretch. Like, there is going to be some great chemistry there rolling into the next year. I like that. And then Ronald Jones, I think I was pretty proud of this. If Fournette were to leave as well, I like, Ronald Jones to see an increase in touches. And as my 3rd running back, I love that. And then we talked about the debacle, Justin Herbert or Lamar Jackson. Man, I was ready to take Herbert in the 6th. But I wanted to see how it played out. And so I ended up getting Lamar Jackson. Worse things could have happened there. Chase Edmonds kind of fallen as well. If, we saw Cliff Kingsbury last week talking about Chase Edmonds capable of being a starting running back. We know that they like him there. Should Drake move on? And then I just wanted to stack guys with upside. That's Henry Ruggs, Noah Fant, Kylan Hill, Evan Ingram, Keyshawn Vaughn to kind of protect the Ronald Jones pick. And then I like Mike Williams down here in the 14th as well. I think that Mike Williams, with another full year, hopefully with Justin Herbert, we saw him kind of get going a little bit before he got banged up.
And hopefully not a torn labrum.
Yeah, exactly. That guy's just so ready to be a great football player, just like has not had it all click. And I just think like he's so talented. And with a good quarterback, that could be good. And then Baker as a backup quarterback, and KJ Hamler, I think, is just a second-year guy that could pop off next year. And in the 16th, I like this team. I thought it was pretty well balanced.
I love this team.
Love the team. Yeah,
I think this team is absolutely nasty.
The floor's a little bit potentially low, but this is a championship level team for me. Just like with the pack there, Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans. Like, there's all these worlds where Mike Evans could have his best year of his career next year. Calvin Ridley as well. Like, this dude is leveling up so quick. Yeah. And Keenan Allen showed no signs of regression. And when his connection there with Justin Herbert was like the good games, it was scary. Like 20 freaking targets, like stupid stuff, video game stuff. And then Lamar Jackson.
I love that point you made there, Austin, on Mike Evans. Sorry, Johnny. Like, I'd love to see what Randy Moss's age was going into that year with Brady. Not saying it's going to be exactly the same output, but like Randy Moss wasn't exactly a spring chicken when he got with Brady. No. And so like not Mike Evans is probably a little younger, but Mike Evans still very young, 26, I think.
Yeah, and he's
27. So yeah,
as proven a commodity that exists at wide receiver. So.
Yeah, exactly. Never had under 1,000 yards receiving yards in a season.
The only player to do it 7 straight years. So.
I gotta admit, Big Travie the last 2 weeks, man, has really, we get a couple guests on, and all of a sudden this guy starts mock drafting like.
He's a little quieter over there too. I'm like, where's all the famous chit chat from Travie? No,
wait a second.
I want to give everybody their take. I want to stand back a little, let him shine.
Unbelievable. Hey, Jay
yeah.
Blizzy is not in this draft. I think he's been helping out Big Travie. I don't think
Yeah,
he's been.
Yeah, it's my surrogate drafter over there.
I love it.
Blizzy.
I've never seen Jay Blizzy before. I know he's got curly hair. So does
Could
Travis.
be.
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
be. You never seen us in the same room, have you?
Yeah, no, never.
Save the best for last year. Ryan, bring us home here on the host takes.
So with Dynasty, I don't go deep at running back typically, but I try to get my guys early. And so I mentioned before I chose the 1-3 because there were 3 running backs I wanted, and the 2 I wanted more went ahead of Dalvin Cook. But I love everything Dalvin Cook. I love everything about Minnesota's doing around him. Obviously injury concerns, but as 2020 proved, everybody has an injury concern. So I'm not going to fret. I'm just going to take a guy who has a great nose for the end zone. And then I got to back that up with Miles Sanders. New offense there, an offense that we saw make Jonathan Taylor great, Marlon Mack the year before that. I think Sanders is going to have his best season in this new Philly offense as long as they can do something about that offensive line. And then things just fell into my lap because if I can get DeAndre Hopkins, who's tied to Kyler Murray for the next 5 to 7 years as my wide receiver 1 in the 3rd round, I am A-okay with that. We talked about DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore is 23 years old. If I'm not wrong, he's the perfect dynasty pick at this point in the draft. And so I will rarely take a rookie running back as my RB2. It was the same game plan I had with Jonathan Taylor last year. I've heard nothing but great things about this Javonte Williams. And again, not a big college guy, but people who I value, essentially the entire staff over at Ball Blast Football, loves Javonte Williams. And he was sitting there for me in the 5th. I figured, why not? Next round was able to land Adam Thielen this late in the draft. It's up there, not quite with the Mike Evans value, but Julio Jones went a few picks a few picks before this. I would have loved to have gotten Julio this late. Thielen is a guy who does it year in, year out. They're a 2 wide receiver team. I'm not worried about him. Justin Jefferson can shine and Adam Thielen can shine. We already talked about Justin Herbert versus Lamar Jackson. I love Justin Herbert. Got him in almost all my rookie drafts last year. Intend on having him in a lot of redraft leagues this year. Tyler Boyd in a half PPR, tied to Joe Burrow, going to be a great player. And then this is where I had earmarked quarterbacks, especially in a dynasty, that I wanted, and they had all went except for Jalen Hurts. So while I don't love taking back-to-back quarterbacks 3 rounds apart from each other, the guys who I wanted outside of this, there was nobody. So I knew I needed to get him now before I didn't get a chance to get him. Now, it turns out no quarterback went between now and my next other pick. So I don't know how big of a need that was, but I still got my guy. So now I have 2 young quarterbacks that are starters of what should be 2 good offenses. And that's kind of big for me. And don't think about it as a redraft. I have these guys forever now, unless I decide to trade one of them. Mm-hmm. Running back dried up quickly, as we all knew it would. So I grabbed James Conner just because he's proven he can do it. I don't know where he's going to end up. This could be a completely wasted pick, but there was nobody there I wanted more. Philip Lindsay, another guy. He's proven he could do it. I believe he's a restricted free agent, so he may end up back in Denver, but I think he's a guy a team could take a chance on. What's funny is we had Kate from Ball Blast on. She's a big Pittsburgh fan. Lindsay is a guy I would love to see end up in Pittsburgh. I think he has the playing style. I think he's a guy who would fit into that offense greatly. So if he ends up in the right situation, Philip Lindsay could be a steal this late. We talked about Sterling Shepard, target monster, and then I had to get into my tight ends. And like I said, in a dynasty, it's hard to stream tight ends, so you need to make sure you land guys. So I got Logan Thomas, just the tight end 5 last year in the 13th round of the draft. And then 2 rounds later, grabbed Blake Jarwin, a guy I was huge on. Dallas's offense produced a decent tight end in Dalton Schultz. That was all supposed to be Jarwin, and it would have been better if Jarwin was in there. And then just in case they don't work out, I have Rob Gronkowski, and we know he's going to score a touchdown every other week, especially if Godwin does chase the bag. In between all of that, was able to add T.Y. Hilton, aging guy. I think he probably ends up back in Indy, especially now that they have a quarterback. So I'm interested to see if he comes back to play with Carson Wentz. But if he ends up in the right situation, if he ends up the wide receiver across from Terry McLaurin or the wide receiver across from Devontae Parker in Washington or Dallas, Miami, I think that could work out very well for his value. And it's going to help the whatever quarterback he's playing with at that point.
Love that.
Did you like TY even if he stays in Indy?
Only because I'm not as high on Michael Pittman as others. I'm not saying Michael Pittman's a bad player, but I think Ty would end up being the security blanket to Carson Wentz. He's going to be an underneath route kind of guy. I think they're going to ask him to change his game. I don't believe Paris Campbell is going to be able to stay healthy and do anything. So I do think if Ty stays in Indy and has Carson Wentz on the ball to him, it could work out for him.
Yeah, I think this team's really good, Ryan.
Yeah.
I like the double quarterback, the plethora of tight ends. It really helped to balance out. I'd say maybe a little bit wide receiver scares me just a little bit,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
other than that, I think it's really well put together.
And I think avoiding the rookie wide receivers here just gave him a really strong team, especially for this year. And you can layer up the rookies in the years to come, but this is the only time where you can get as many proven commodities. And to be able to get T.Y. Hilton this late when he could very well, I'm not surprised if he's a wide receiver 2 next year. That's a phenomenal pickup that you're able to get that late, just because everyone starts thinking of like the future. And you're like,
and that's one thing you notice in these startup drafts all the time. And we kind of talked about this on Mike Evans, and I briefly brought his name up. Julio Jones plummets in startup dynasty drafts. And it's like people forget that Julio Jones is very good at football. So,
Yeah.
love those takes. Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, and I just wanted to say that, like, the way he built his teams, it's kind of nice where, Travis had some questions on the wide receivers, but when you're looking at a dynasty, this is a tip, like, it's easier to find the wide receivers on the waiver, even in a dynasty league, than it is a running back. So I think that you and Javonte Williams, we're big fans of Javonte Williams on this show as well. So I like your team. I think you did a really good job.
I love when smart people all agree on a player. It makes things very easy for me because, like, I don't dig as deep on rookies, but I take a lot of other people's opinions to help form my opinion in the good and the bad. But everybody really seems to be agreeing on this kid.
Makes it easier when you when you're wrong too.
Yeah,
at least everybody was wrong with you.
Exactly. Yeah, nobody's coming for your throat at that point.
And Nat Chatter, before we start breaking down the rest of Whisper Nation who drafted along here with us, I just wanted to add, what's up, Stro?
Stro,
Good to have you here with us. Love that.
Yeah.
The one thing added, we talk a lot about the commentary coming in on these players, and in Dynasty, especially early on, that commentary holds more weight than people might want to accept because we're talking lifetime on these players. And a guy, like, there's a known reality that most rookies actually don't do that well, and you're going to kind of wait until their second or third year before you really get critical on how well they're doing. So if you draft a guy who everybody's like, this guy's great, but then his rookie year isn't so good, it doesn't mean he's done now. Exactly. Like, he can actually hold like maybe 85-90% of what that reputation was, even with a somewhat flop rookie year, just because everyone knows rookies sometimes take some time.
I want to throw a guy out that plays into that example, and you can go get him right now for way cheaper than you should be, and that's Jerry Jeudy. Everybody feels like he had a down rookie season, which wide receivers tend to do. Drew Lock is not the best quarterback, and we don't know how long he's going to be stuck with him, but Jerry Jeudy is an excellent wide receiver. You have to remember how much you loved him last year, because he's not going to become a worse player. He is going to become a better player, and he's hopefully going to drag Drew Lock up, or maybe they go out and get a quarterback. But regardless, Jerry Jeudy is an undervalued asset in Dynasty right now.
Second wide receiver taken, right?
Yeah.
Last year? Yeah. High talent. Great points there. Well, let's go ahead now and take a look at how the rest of Whisper Nation did drafting. I'll go ahead. I started this off on our own rundowns. I'll go ahead and take this. Should we go with Easy Daddy first? Johnny's got it selected. He went 1-1 Christian McCaffrey. Not a issue with that pick in any dimension. Najee Harris there to close out the second. You're going on an upside rookie play. Jamar Chase, really high upside on these rookies, but as Ryan had pointed out, it's tough with rookies because their landing spot is so critical. And then Kyle Pitts, we all love the prospect there. A lot of great places he could land. What if he lands in a place that ain't so great, though? Gives me a little pause. Trevor Lawrence, we know where he's going. I think he's a fine prospect looking forward. But I'm in no world am I taking Trevor Lawrence before Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. I've just seen too many first round busts. It just happens. Like we can't think of everything in probability. There's no such thing as 100%. There's no such thing as 0% in fantasy football. That just really concerns me. You need him to be one of the best rookie quarterbacks of all time for that to justify that pick right there. Yeah. Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette, 2 running backs. I like Melvin Gordon, actually. Leonard Fournette, it's a decent enough pick where I don't have an issue with it, but we don't know where he's going to end up. But I do like Leonard Fournette's prospects moving forward. I think he's a decent running back who's got a lot of anger in his feet, and he's just coming off a good Super Bowl performance. Will Fuller, another guy who doesn't necessarily have a team, but we like the talent, don't like the suspension. Aaron Rodgers is going to be fine for you next year, so I kind of actually like that Trevor Lawrence pick now more, given that you got Aaron Rodgers so late last year.
Yeah.
This draft, he's going to have a great year next year, I think. Van Jefferson, whatever. Robert Tonyan, okay. Gabriel Davis, Paris Campbell. I have Paris Campbell in my Dynasty League, and I'm not stoked on it. I hope I'm wrong. Lynn Bowden, that's going to be I think a gadget player for the rest of his life. That's always going to leave you disappointed. Donovan Peoples-Jones, we'll see. Gus Edwards, perennial vulture. Easy Daddy, he's had some really good drafts with us. It's my soft way of saying
he's building for the future, I'd say, on this. He's definitely trying to build for the future.
Definitely building for the future here. Definitely, he didn't grab any. He's not playing for now at all. There isn't any backside guys except for Aaron Rodgers. This team is probably missing the playoffs this year, and you need a lot of things to work out for it to be a strong team in the future. I'm not worried about Jamar Chase. I'm not as worried about Najee Harris, but I still need to see where they land. I still need to see how they perform. I'm going to go with this is like a C.
The fact that it's 3 wide receivers and there's not 3 wide receivers on this team, I'm comfortable starting.
Yeah, that's
being nice too, because it's a C minus here. But I just look at the starting. Who's your starting situation here? Christian McCaffrey, Najee Harris, Melvin Gordon's not bad. It's not great after Christian McCaffrey. 3 wide receivers. Paris Campbell, we don't even know if he's going to start. Will Fuller, he's not going to be starting. So you're rolling Von Jefferson and Jamar Chase. That's not a good. You're not striking fear into any opponent's hearts. Probably striking some fear in your own.
One thing I'll bring up, I think I forget the guy's name that was in the chat harassing us the whole time, Matt. Matt brought up a good point that if you combine it with what Easy Daddy did, it makes sense. A lot of things you'll see in dynasty drafts are people trading back to accumulate picks or even start accumulating rookie picks already. And if you could get these rookies later, if you really wanted Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Trevor Lawrence, you trade out of that 3-1 spot to accumulate picks in later rounds and accumulate more things. And that could work out for your favor. Obviously, we weren't doing that in this mock draft, but so the strategy looks awful, just as nicely as possible. I love the running backs. I actually think Melvin Gordon and Leonard Fournette, 27 years old, 26 years old, respectively, in the 6th and 7th round. I think Fournette's going to be a starter somewhere. I think those could work out really well for him. And in a real league, maybe he trades those to get a real wide receiver, because right now the wide receivers are terrifying.
And hey, work out your stuff. Don't even worry about these grades, because that's all we're doing is getting used to trying different outfits on.
Well, and that was Easy's point. Matt was coming for him in the chat a little bit, and Easy's like, "Hey, man, we're just mocking here. We're practicing. We're getting it done, and
we're just mocking around, dude.
Yeah,
a bunch of guys just mocking around." All right, I'll take the news. I'll break his team down. He took Jonathan Taylor in the 2 spot. We like that pick. No craziness. Not too crazy. Maybe Dalvin. But and then he went Cam Akers, Josh Jacobs. You got to like his first 3 running backs off the board. He took DJ Chark in the 4th, Darren Waller in the 5th. Then you took Robert Woods, Cortland Sutton, Deebo Samuel, and Denzel Mims in rounds 6, 7, 8, and 9. Took Tyreek Cohen in the 10th round. Then he grabbed 2 quarterbacks back to back in the 11th and 12th, and Justin Fields and Ryan Tannehill. And then in the 13th, 14th, and 15th, he grabbed tight ends and Cole Clement, Zach Ertz, and Jonnu Smith. And then he grabbed J.D. McKissick in the 16th round. Listen, I like this draft. I like what he did. A lot of the wide receivers that he grabbed were ones that I was looking at. I thought he got really good value on them. I think he's set for running backs for a while. And as in a dynasty, running backs, especially those that are like bell cow type, are hard to come by. I like this draft. I think I'd give him. I haven't looked at extensively the other teams yet, so I'll give him an A- with the little asterisks that it could potentially be an A. I just haven't seen the other teams in extent.
You grade on a curve, Johnny? You're willing to bring it down? Technically, okay,
100%.
I really like this team. And like the one weakness you could say is the wide receiver position. But then I like what he did to just go through a slew of wide receivers to try and make up for that deficiency. So, yeah, you may not like DJ Shark, or maybe you're low on Cortland Sutton. But now he's got 5 guys to fill the 3 starting spots. And I think that some combination of those could work out. Will you make the right choices? We'll see. But I think
because they listen to the Fantasy Whispers.
Right, exactly. So I think, the top heaviness with the running backs and then also Darren Waller there really helps his prospects. Exactly. And then I just love taking Ryan Tannehill. He was going to be my backup here, but I love the Ryan Tannehill pick. I think that's going to set him up really nicely.
Especially with Justin Fields, right? Getting that youth coming in, but the Tannehill, that should be fine for you this year and the next year. And even if Justin Fields falls flat, you've got Tannehill for a while.
We were talking about guys that could maybe have burned you last year, but maybe, bounce back the following year. Jonnu Smith is one of those guys for me. I'm really excited about to see what Jonnu Smith can put together next year. Maybe the inconsistencies of being the number 1 guy got to him a little bit last year, but that guy was on a pace to really be a mover and shaker at the tight end position last year.
Yeah. I recently did a Twitter poll about where people would like to see him land, and Arizona came up a lot, and I think that would be an awesome spot for him.
They've talked about him here on the radio a couple of times, which makes me think that there have been discussions within Arizona because Dan. Now I forget, Dan Arnold. He's gone. Yep. And so and you saw like a report that Kyler liked to use the tight end. So I would absolutely love it if Jonnu Smith came here. That would be awesome.
All right. I think I'll step up, take Brocal 38 here. Devontae Adams, this one got a lot of heat from the chat as being a reach here at 1-4. And I could see a situation where you're like maybe trying to get another running back in here before there. But like what he did as far as 3 elites go, we talk about this strategy a lot. Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, Josh Allen. You're looking pretty nice in a dynasty with those pillars to kind of build around. And I love Josh Allen. I think he's just took an amazing step last year. So that's exciting to see there. But then I have a little bit of questions past this. Chris Carson, Devonta Smith, then Kenyon Drake, who we just don't really know what's going to happen with Kenyon Drake and if he'll be efficient enough in whatever position he's in to warrant that pick there. Cooper Kupp, Michael Carter, and Tylan Wallace, both rookies there. Then we had Jamison Crowder. Irv Smith we talked a little bit about, so kind of a nice pick as your backup tight end there. We like that. Zach Wilson is a quarterback a lot of people are high on here coming out of Brigham Young, so we'll see where he lands and what that looks like. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown there, another rookie. Mac Jones, another rookie. I don't even know how to say it. Ramondre Stevenson, that's another rookie as well. And then Devin Duvernay. So I think he went heavy youth, especially in the back end here after building a very top-heavy squad. Look, I love those pillars to start with, but the running back depth, the wide receiver depth, scare me greatly in this team, especially starting 3 wide receivers. I have to go with a C here. C plus I'll give him just because I do like the 3 elites, but I don't think I can give him anything better than that.
There's just no value right here, right? Like it's like nobody fell to you. It was like a reach for your guy at every spot. Even I like Josh Allen, but you take him in the 3rd round in a dynasty startup, when you're able to get Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, so much later. And
just look at all the wide receivers that went that round too. Sorry, Austin.
Yeah.
Like Calvin Ridley, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Thomas, all behind that Josh Allen pick. Like you could have really set yourself up to have some depth, especially where you're starting 3 wide receivers.
Ryan's talked about how hard it is for those running backs. Chris Carson, Kenyon Drake, and Michael Carter. Those are your starting running backs right now. Exactly. You're not building for the future. You're not building for now. You're digging out of a hole.
Yeah, 2 of your running backs don't have teams, or technically all 3 have no team right now. So they all have an awful situation.
Right. Yeah. All right. Next one.
So I think that's Mr.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely adore this team. Literally, if it's almost like they took a diagram of how to draft a dynasty team. So you start off with Saquon Barkley and J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins, arguably my second favorite rookie running back. Saquon Barkley, if it wasn't for his injury last year, Saquon Barkley is easily the 102, 103 at worst, and you just got him at 1.6. You back that up with just amazing youth at wide receiver. 3 second-year wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, Chase Claypool, who all showed they could do it last year already. Assuming Dak re-signs, CD and Higgins are both tied to young quarterbacks. But then my favorite pick of his team, and we've already alluded to it, was then backing all of that up by landing Julio Jones in the 6th round. Julio Jones is still going to be a very startable fantasy asset next season, but he's going to have to pick his battles. We kind of talked about this, starting the right one, but there are worse problems to have than choosing the right 3 of these 4 wide receivers. And if you play the other guy in your flex spot, Rashad Bateman, landing spot's going to come in big, but I've seen Twitter's kind of torn on him. I've seen a lot of people really high, a lot of people really low. I think landing spot's going to be the most important factor for him. Joe Burrow, you want him to bounce back healthy, but in a dynasty league, you're not worried about the first 3 games of next season. You're worried about the next 3 to 4 years. That's a great pick there. Back to running back, because he obviously needed depth. He hasn't taken a running back since the Dobbins pick in the 2nd round. He grabs rookie Jamar Jefferson. Landing spot, again, is going to be big, but David Johnson is a guy he just landed in the 10th round who's going to provide excellent depth for at least the next 1 to 2 seasons. He just re-signed with Houston. He's there for at least 1 more year. They're not going to have many other weapons, so go ahead and land David Johnson now. He's going to be great if something happens to Saquon or Dobbins. Jalen Reagor, we don't know what we had out of Jalen Reagor. He showed flashes last year. You obviously hope it's going to get better. He's a 2nd-year player with his quarterback. There should be some rapport there. Dallas Goedert, excellent tight end pickup this late, especially if they release Zach Ertz, which everyone expects them to. Now, all of a sudden, he's the main show in town. It's going to be great. But this was a great pick as well. Matt Stafford should be fantastic with the Rams. Maybe not fantastic, but a back-end QB1, and you're going to be able to start him for those first 5 weeks while you're waiting to see what you have out of Burrow. We touched on Troutman. Troutman was a guy I was really interested in. Basically, me Seeks here just got a lot of the guys that I was hoping fell to me 3 picks later. Troutman with Jared Cook being released is going to be an excellent tandem to go with Goddard, where you're only going to have to pick one of them. Everybody, we talked about Rashad Penny. DJ Dallas could be the thorn in Rashad Penny's side. DJ Dallas was a guy they drafted in the 4th round last year, somewhere in there. Looked great coming out of Miami, and I think he's going to be a player who they're going to want to get involved. They found a lot of ways to get him involved as a rookie, and that was with Chris Carson in town. If Chris Carson's gone and they don't bring in a big name, I think Dallas is going to be there. And then Marlon Mack, he's such a tough call, but in the 16th round, you're not worried about it. It's an Achilles injury. You have no idea how he's going to bounce back. You have no idea where he's going to land. I don't think he's going to be much for you next year, but if he has 1 or 2 good games, he's an excellent trade piece, and you got him in the 16th round. I don't see a lot of problems with this team. Running back depth is a little bit of an issue, especially for a dynasty team. So that kind of knocked him out of the A column for me. It's definitely a B, and I'm probably leaning towards B plus just because of what he did at wide receiver and running back with those first 6 picks.
Yeah, that was a good call, I think, to knock him out of A, because I was ready, like after you broke it down, I was ready to give him the A, but you brought up the depth at running back is just kind of a little bit shitty.
Good team that could grow into it.
Yeah. Really good.
So I'm next. I'm taking up Jacob Bley, our number 1 fan, and then we'll get hello, how are you, and Reed Tyler, because we just have one auto drafted one in there. But we've got here Jacob Bley at the 8th spot, took Mr. 2000 Derrick Henry, followed by Antonio Gibson, 2nd-year halfback, and George Kittle he got in the 3rd. That's nice. Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, and Juju Smith-Schuster for a trio of wide receivers. Raheem Mostert's going to be his 3rd halfback. Dak Prescott, as of now, is his starting QB. He's got Robbie Anderson as his 4th wide receiver. Tony Pollard there. Hanging around Mecole Hardman and Darius Slayton for depth. Darrionton Evans, 2nd-year running back. Didn't see a lot of what he was about last year with Tennessee, but they were high on him coming into the draft. You never really got a chance to see what he was about. Trey Lance, rookie quarterback, coming in. Damian Williams and Austin Hooper to close it out. I think that when you look at now, his running backs, Antonio Gibson, Derrick Henry, it's good. His starting wide receivers, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, Juju Smith-Schuster. If Terry McLaurin takes a jump, it's very good. As of right now, you're pretty happy. It could beat any probably trio. It won't beat the best ones, but it's a respectable squad that, depending on where they land and develop, could turn into something more. I don't think that they're going to regress too much more. I think that their starting point is pretty good with a lot of upside for those 3 wide receivers. Raheem Mostert, when he was there and he was playing, he was the guy. He's got more sneaky physicals that kind of go underrated. Definitely somebody who's got a lot of competition over there, and he is 28 years old, but I don't hate that as your 3rd running back. Dak Prescott, we'll see how he bounces back, but that could be nice. Robbie Anderson, we talked a lot about the underrated ability for him. We'll see how the quarterback situation over there. Mecole Hardman should take a bump up. Darius Slayton, we'll see and then some depth here in the backside. I got no issues with this team. I think it's a very strength at running back. I don't have a lot of holes at the wide receiver, question marks at quarterback. This is it's a very strong B team that I'm not surprised if it's quickly an A minus, depending on really what happens to those rookie wide receivers. But then also the positional advantage with George Kittle. I really, it's not as sexy of a team to me, but I think it's a pretty solid team. I'm closer to B plus for me.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, if all things considered, maybe it's Dak's health.
Yeah,
but it's the fact that he's definitely got a great starting roster. It's like it's really close to an A for me. Like I think you hit it on the head there. Like this is really close to an A. Just has a couple questions on Terry and then Juju, like a landing spot for Juju and what happens there. But man, it's good.
I'm kind of hot on Juju. I think Juju's going to have a good year next year. That's just my own gut.
Well, and like Mostert could be a sneaky pick because Coleman and McKinnon should both be gone. We don't know if either will re-sign, but they still have
Jefferson or Jeff Wilson. Sorry.
No, they brought him back, I thought.
Oh, they did bring him back?
Yeah.
So Wilson
I
is
was
back.
expecting him to go to the Jets.
No, Wilson is back, and then Jermichael Hasty they got as a UDFA. I imagine he'll be back in some form next year. So I think Raheem Mostert could be a sneaky value. And then Tony Pollard. And I don't think this is true, but if Zeke did fall off of a cliff last year and what we saw did not have to do with Dak Prescott, it had to do with Zeke, Tony Pollard is going to continue to see playing time growth, and he is going to be a very sneaky value in that offense.
I really like that. I like that. 2 cents. Very good. All right. I will break down. Hello, how are you? I'm doing well. Thank you. I don't know about this team though.
We'll see.
I'm just kidding. I haven't even gone through it.
I was like, wow.
I haven't even gone through it. All right. So we had CEH at the 109 pick, Stephon Diggs in the second round, Chris Godwin in the third round, Travis Etienne in the fourth, Jerry Jeudy in the fifth, Deshaun Watson in the sixth, Jalen Waddle, Rondell Moore in the seventh and eighth round, took Damian Harris, who I really wanted, in the ninth, Darnell Mooney in the 10th, Tua Tagovailoa in the 11th, then Brevin Jordan in the 12th, Pat, I'm just going to call him Pat in the tight end. Say that.
Fryer.
Yeah, thank you. And then Todd Gurley in the 14th and Anthony McFarlane and Le'Veon Bell in the 15th and 16th. I like some pieces, but I don't know if it's going to be one of the top 4 teams. I think this is a solid team. I think that, obviously Jalen Waddle, Rondell Moore, those are going to be big pieces that you need to figure out where the location is or where they drafted. Took a lot of rookies. So generally probably the frame of mind was he wants to try to compete, but I don't know, B-. That's what I would do. B-.
Yeah, I don't have a major argument with that grade. I think I'd probably still go C+. I'm a little bit hesitant. It's just hard for me to grade some of these teams with heavy rookie influence when we don't know where they're at. Yeah. So it just gets a little tough for me to grade. I think that's all it is really for me.
The running backs just terrify me. They could be great, but they just terrify me.
Yeah. All right. Reed Tyler.
I'll let Ryan. Why don't you take Reed
I was
Tyler?
going to say, I don't want to step on any toes.
Yeah,
it's up to you guys.
Take us home.
So obviously, picking at the back end of the draft, running backs tend to dry up quickly. That's redraft. That's dynasty. But you got Tyreek Hill and then come around on the corner and get Justin Jefferson to back it up. You have 2 young wide receivers tied to very good quarterbacks. Justin Jefferson, I think, just had the best rookie season of a wide receiver ever. And then you come back around and grab Kyler Murray in the third. We kind of, Josh Allen in the third, Kyler Murray in the third. It feels early because he's at the back end. It's definitely reach for your guy. I might have waited, you got Aaron Jones in the next round. I don't know. I might have waited around on the quarterback, but Kyler Murray is super young, super exciting offense. He's a rushing quarterback, which is the cheat code in fantasy. I don't mind getting him. I just don't know that seeing how the quarterbacks played out, I don't know that I would want him in the third round. Running back is where things again get a little terrifying for me. Aaron Jones, I absolutely adore. It's going to come down to where he plays. I hope he's in Green Bay or Miami. If it's one of those two spots, I think he's a top 5 running back, and you just got a top 5 running back in the 4th round of a fantasy draft. Not to mention, it's not like he's old. He's 26 years old. The wall for running back seems to be 30. And because of how Green Bay's used him, he doesn't have a ton of tread on his tires. Mark Andrews, this is the wrong person to be grading your team, because I am fully off of the Mark Andrews bus. I am now. Last year, I would have told you that there were 4 elite tight ends: Waller, Kelsey, Kittle, and Andrews. There are now 3 elite tight ends, and I am not going to be drafting Mark Andrews at pretty much any cost that he is available. Could he bounce back? Absolutely. He's tied to a young quarterback, which is important in fantasy. I just want nothing to do with him. Definitely not in the 5th round. Myles Gaskin looked great last year. If he is the starter, Miami tends to use their starting running back way more than most teams in the NFL. If he's the guy, he's going to be great. Is he, though? But man, did you redeem yourself grabbing Tyler Lockett, Michael Pittman in the 7th and 8th round. Trey Sermon as a rookie running back, Naheem Hines, then Curtis Samuel, Brandon Cooks, so 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. Hayden Hurst is your backup tight end, which is hilarious because they used to play with each other. And I actually had these guys on a fantasy team at one point, so I was so happy when Hurst went to Atlanta. Christian Kirk, if he stays the number 2 in Arizona, I love. Kirk Cousins as your backup to Kyler Murray. You could do far worse than Kirk Cousins, who is a perennial top 12 quarterback, and you're getting him in the 15th round. And it's not like he's leaving anytime soon. He's 32 years old. And then Cole Beasley to end the draft. Great filler piece. He's going to be a great bye week fill-in, but you're so good at wide receiver. I probably would have went with another position here. You didn't really need the wide receiver value. Just like with Hello, How Are You? The running backs terrify me outside of Aaron Jones, who is one of my favorite backs in the league. And I actually love Myles Gaskin. I just don't think he's going to be the starter anymore. So Jones is probably going to be a top 5, top 10 talent, no matter where he ends up. Gaskin could literally fall off the map, because if they get a running back there, maybe Aaron Jones, Gaskin's not going to see the ball unless Jones gets hurt. So now all of a sudden you have the same running back for one team as your 1 and 2. Naheem Hines, role should be secure, but he's not a guy you want to start at RB2 every week. It's such a rough team. And then the reach for Mark Andrews when you could have been loading up on running backs. You're so good at wide receiver. You're solid at quarterback. There were a few reaches to get your guy. I would probably give this a B-, C+, just because of my hate for the running backs. So,
yeah, I'm at B- on. I agree.
Yeah, you might be going a little too harsh on my boy Mark Andrews, but I understand being burned by a guy. So I get where you're at. Mentally,
that probably cost you half a letter grade right there, just because.
And I will say I would say it's not all on Mark Andrews. I think a little bit is on Lamar. So I think if Lamar can fix that, then Mark Andrews will be just fine. But
yeah, my biggest question is, can he be an alpha, or is he just going to be the leader of the betas, which is kind of what we see in the tight end world? Is there's all these alphas, and then there's just a lot of guys you can maybe start every week.
Right.
My question is not per se can he be, it's will Baltimore's offense allow him to be.
There's that
kind of.
He's like the best flex tight end I've ever seen. In that he's like that high up, low floor. He can get you 20 points. He could get you 2 catches, for 15 yards. Like unlike any guy I've ever really seen. So it's just, is he going to get the work or not? It's hard to say with Lamar Jackson. Man, we did it. We did another mock draft Monday. So grateful for our host, our guest host here, Ryan Weisse, joining the panel at the Fantasy 5. We do this every Monday. Love to have Whisper Nation jumping in with us. Make sure that you follow on Twitter. Like and subscribe on all the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, our Twitter as well, so you can catch these coming with us and maybe draft with us next week. Ryan, you want to give them a quick plug on the way out and where they can follow you at and make sure to stay up to date?
My Twitter handle's in my picture here. If you're not on here, it's the Fantasy 5 FIVE, but I'm going to hit you with the same plug I've hit you with before. Go follow the Speakeasy FF, International Women's Day. Support women in sports, support women in your life. So,
most wholesome, best well-rounded guest we've had, and I don't care if any of our other people are listening. Final thoughts?
This was a blast, mock draft all year long. It's how you're going to get better.
I'm Austin Sear. Ryan, Johnny Game Time Hicks, or Big Travie. We're the Fantasy Whispers. We're out.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.